Boy, we're about to have a party here, aren't we? This is sounding like fun, but I would like to call us to order this March 22nd meeting of the City Council of Charleston. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gregg, Councilmember Shealy, Councilmember Saccharine, Councilmember Mitchell, Councilmember Brady,
Present.
Councilmember Gregory, Councilmember Waring, Councilmember Seekings, Councilmember Shade, Councilmember Bowden, Councilmember Appel, Councilmember Parker, Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. Now, if y'all would like to join us, Councilmember Shade, to lead us in an invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Madam Clerk. I'm going to ask to do something a little different tonight in our invocation. I've asked Councilmember Appel to join me. I have prepared a prayer for the night, which is a hybrid of two prayers that I found on dealing with the Holocaust Memorial Week, since our first order of business is going to be the Holocaust Remembrance Proclamation. So please join with me, Councilmember Appel, as we go through this. Loving God, we come to you with heavy hearts, remembering the 6 million Jewish souls murdered during the Holocaust.
In the horrors of that history, when so many groups were targeted because of their identity, and in genocides which followed, we recognize destructive prejudices that drive people apart.
Forgive us when we give space to fear, negativity, and hatred of others simply because they are different from us.
In the light of God, we see everyone as equally precious manifestations of the divine.
Help us to recognize our own capacity for evil and allow your spirit to purge it from our beings.
Help us also to stand up against evil and oppression.
Enable us to defend those who are not strong enough to defend themselves, and to be ready to bring the light of your truth into the dark area of human experience.
Restrain those who are filled with hatred and use violence to pursue their ends. Change their hearts. May remembrance make us alert to the reality of evil and its deceptive allure. We remember before you all those who bear the inner and outer scars of the Holocaust and of subsequent acts of genocide. Let them not be overwhelmed by the horrors that engulf them. Be close to them. Help them to see that no wickedness can ever extinguish your infinite love.
Through our prayers and actions, help us to stand together with those who are suffering, so that light may banish all darkness, love will prevail over hate, and goodwill will triumph over evil. Amen.
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 Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. And thank you for your patience as we got a little late start today. This is just one of those announcements that we should never have to use, but just in the outside event that we would have to evacuate the building. The way out is these two doors here, and there's one door out from the room to my right. In that case, don't use the elevator, but go down the 2 steps and then out the steps to the front. That's how we get out, just in case we needed to leave the building. Okay, so first up, I'd like to just share with council the sadness of the loss of one of our citizens of the area. At least he was a citizen of Allendale. That's the former mayor, William Alston. He was also the longstanding pastor of Macedonia AME Church. Used to be over on Alexander Street. They've now moved West Ashley. A new Mayor Alston, back in my days when I worked in the city in the 90s and various efforts. He was a fine gentleman. I offered a resolution to the family in council's behalf, just to let you know, at the funeral this past weekend. But next up is our Holocaust Remembrance Proclamation. So I'd like to ask all kind of folks to come up here and join me. Rabbi Memron, if you would lead your team here, but I want to note particularly 2 Holocaust survivors, both Joe Engel and Deanie Atkins, who are coming up to the counter right now. Joe, good to see you. God bless you. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, come on over a little bit more so everybody can see you. And, that was a beautiful prayer and remembrance. Thank you, Councilmember Shade and Appel. And I have the proclamation, but first I would like to ask Rabbi Mimran to read a prayer for the 6 million. Rabbi?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, council members, for this proclamation and for showing Holocaust remembrance the importance that it deserves. I would like to very briefly mention our gratitude to the mayor for agreeing to attend a Holocaust remembrance ceremony on Sunday at our synagogue as part of the Holocaust cattle car, together with Senator Scott and other dignitaries. All council members are invited along with the public. Now for the prayer, I'll say it first in Hebrew and then in English. El mali rachamim sheichim b'amroimim hamtzei menucha nechoina al kanfei hashchina b'malis kadoshim v'toyim kazoy ha'akiyam asirim es nishmais 6 million akadoshim anoshim noshim v'taf kehilis hakodesh amosru nafsham al kedushas Hashem v'chein ba'al harachamim yastiyam b'seisa knofav le'ilomim v'yitzro b'tzroi ha'chaim es nishmaiseyem adinoyu nachalosam v'yinochu b'shalom ha'mish k'veiseihem v'neimar amen. God, full of mercy, who dwells in the heights, shelter them beneath the wings of your presence, high among the holy and the pure, who shine like the brilliant heavens. Shelter the souls of the innocent 6 million men, women, and children, holy communities who were slaughtered in the Holocaust, strangled, suffocated, and burnt to ash. Amongst them, young children who never tasted sin in their life, and their death were never separated. Their holy souls passed into your care. Let the Garden of Eden be their resting place. Master of mercy, drape them and keep them forever in your protecting presence, and bind their souls to the living and to the life. God, you are their inheritance, and where they rest, ease them with peace. And let us say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi, and members of the Jewish Federation who are here with us this evening. And here is our proclamation regarding the Holocaust remembrance. Whereas the Holocaust was a state-sponsored, systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945. And whereas we remember with sadness the 11 million, including 6 million Jews who were victims of Hitler's, quote, final solution, along with those who were persecuted for their religious and political beliefs, sexual orientation, and physical disabilities. And whereas we remember with admiration the resistors and rescuers, known and unknown, who risked and lost their lives to save others, and whereas we remember with respect the survivors who escaped, 2 of which are proudly with us tonight, were sheltered or who were freed and who lived to contribute so much to our community and to our world. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individual societies and governments, whereas we have an obligation to ensure that the memory and legacy of lives lost or forever changed in this horrific event are never forgotten. And we remember and honor the liberators of the World War II concentration camp 77 years ago. Whereas I encourage all citizens to remember the victims of the Holocaust and to firmly commit themselves to promote human dignity by confronting intolerance and hate whenever and wherever it occurs. I invite all citizens of our community to join in the Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance Program, which will be held at the Holocaust Memorial in Marion Square on Sunday, May 1st. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, on behalf of this City Council, do hereby proclaim the week April 4th to April 11th to be Week of Remembrance in memory of the victims, survivors, rescuers, and liberators of the Holocaust. And with that, Rabbi, or if anyone from the Jewish Federation would like to make brief remarks, and I would also like to further recognize Charleston's esteemed Joe Engel and Deanie Atkins, if they would like to make brief remarks as well. Anybody want?
Hello, I am Deanie Atkins. I'm 84 years old. And 2 years ago, I was attacked because I was a dirty Jew. And naturally, our police was very helpful, but I ended up in the hospital. I go to schools and I go to organizations, and whoever wants me can always, give me a call with the I can pronounce the virus. The virus. I have my children. When I'm not here anymore, my daughter Phyllis Mayer is going to take over for me. And we have to remember, we cannot forget, especially anybody. You should be loved. Right now, we have so much turmoil in the world that every night I pray that everything will be okay.
Amen.
Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Deanie. There's even a movie out about this guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, whatever you watch the television now, what happened in Ukraine, I went through everything when I was a little boy. When the German bombed our city, we walked for 24 hours to Warsaw. In Warsaw, everything was destroyed. We couldn't find a place to live. But after a while, we find a place in the bunkers. So I hope things like this never happen to anybody. We must keep our eyes open to prevent for us and for the future generation. Things like this should never happen to anybody. And I went through. I was in the ghetto. I was in Auschwitz. I escaped. I was in the resistance. And thank God, now I'm here.
Thank God.
Thank God I'm here. So I want to thank you. I've been coming here for what? I don't know for how long. I hope to be here another 10 years.
Amen.
And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Joe.
you.
Hello, my name is Scott Rittenbaum, and I'm a volunteer for the Charleston Jewish Federation's Remember program, which consists of Holocaust survivors, their descendants, educators, and concerned citizens, such as everybody here. Now look away from my script because after listening to Deanie and Joe, what's written down here feels mighty inadequate. So I'd like to say from my heart that I stand here with a lot of humility beside them and with a lot of gratefulness for being part of this community where our community is welcome. And that I hope, as the mayor said earlier, that you will join us on May 2nd for Yom HaShoah, a day of remembrance, where we'll be together as a whole community for everyone, those who were Jewish and others who perished during the Holocaust. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, one more thing to draw to your attention. Councilman Appel handed out some flyers for us, but this Sunday at Congregation Dor Tikva, there's a traveling exhibit that is housed in a cattle car, like the ones used in the Holocaust. And we're having an opening ceremony for that exhibit on Sunday, March 27th at 12 at Congregation Dor Tikva. You all have the information in front of you, and we hope to see some of you there. I know the mayor has confirmed that he's attending, and Senator Scott as well. So we look forward to seeing some of your faces too. Thank you.
And bring your children 12 and up, because it's so important that we share this history, because obviously you see, we constantly say never again, and look where we are right now. We are in the thick of it right now. And this brings so much terror to these people that have already lived through something like that. So by going to this event that's coming up on Sunday, it's an immersive event. So it's a replica of a cattle car, but when you get in there, it tells a story, and it's the history that we need to tell. So I actually beg of you to, if you don't come to this event on Sunday, I beg that you come to our event for Yom HaShoah, because these folks are not going to be here much longer. And just to hear their stories and hear the things that our committee puts together so that we can educate and continue this plight. It's not over, and it's just starting. We need to all learn and love each other, and like my mom always taught me. So thanks.
Amen.
Amen.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes,
by
sir.
way of a little bit of good news, the other day I was having a late breakfast, early lunch at the variety store, and behind me there was a huge commotion, as if a rock star had walked in the door. Well, it happens that a rock star did. It was Mr. Engel. He came wandering in. So the good news is for everybody, we just extended the lease on the variety store for another 25 years. So you got a good place to go to breakfast after you come visit with us. So.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Rabbi. So y'all, not to belabor the point, but when we had our service a week or so ago supporting Ukraine and showing solidarity, I did a little quick research, and I'm sure there were some Jewish communities in Europe that were completely wiped out during World War II. But in Ukraine, at the beginning of World War II, there were nearly 3 million Jews in Ukraine. At the end of the war, there were less than 100,000 left. They had been annihilated. Literally, the entire Jewish population of Ukraine had been murdered. And it's so poignant, as noted, with what's going on today, that Vladimir Putin has unleashed on that country and the world. It's genocide, it's murder. He is a war criminal. And I just applaud again and again all of our citizens who are coming together to assist the citizens of Ukraine in every way. Councilmember Appel attended just a gathering in Avondale, West Ashley last Friday, and citizens are getting medical supplies. The Joint Air Base Charleston, I believe, is going to help us fly some over there, but private citizens have been chartering planes. I talked to citizens who are booking flights on commercial airlines just to take as big of bags as they can with supplies to get to Ukraine and then come right back. It's just amazing the outreach that's occurring all over the world, but right here in Charleston as well. So we won't forget, we can't forget, and it's sinful and shameful that yet another evil event is happening as we speak and watch every night on the news. So I couldn't go without saying that. Yeah, Councilmember Shade, we've been asked by the fire marshal not to do so. And I'm going to ask everybody just in your most vivid imagination to shine your light in these efforts to remember the Holocaust and to help our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. So next up, we have our proclamation recognizing the American Red Cross. And I would like to invite my friend and our friend, Katerina Friarding, to come forward. She is the board chair this year of the Low Country chapter of the American Red Cross. And please come up and join me, Katerina. And for you that don't know her, she is a big wig with Volvo, and she really got the Volvo plant going here in Charleston. And we're so thankful to you for that work you've done as well. Let me grab the. So whereas in times of crisis, people in Charleston come together to care for one another, as I just pointed out, this humanitarian spirit is part of the foundation of our community and is exemplified by American Red Cross volunteers and donors. In 1881, Clara Barton, y'all remember that name, founded the American Red Cross, turning her steadfast dedication for helping others into a bold mission of preventing and alleviating people's suffering. Today, more than 140 years later, we honor the kindness and generosity of Red Cross volunteers here in Charleston who continue to carry out Clara's life-saving legacy. They join the millions of people across the United States who volunteer, give blood, donate financially, or learn vital life-preserving skills through the Red Cross. Whereas in Charleston, the contributions of local Red Cross volunteers give hope to the most vulnerable in their darkest hours, whether it's providing emergency shelter, food, and comfort for families devastated by local disasters like home fires. In our case recently, apartment fires, 50 plus units were dislocated. The Red Cross was there right away to help victims from tornadoes, hurricanes, donating essential blood for accident and burn victims, heart surgery and organ transplant patients, and those receiving treatment for leukemia, cancer, and sickle cell disease, supporting service members and veterans along with their families and caregivers through the unique challenges of military life, helping to save the lives of others with first aid, CPR, and other skills, or delivering international humanitarian aid. Whereas the Red Cross of South Carolina volunteers have supported local families in other ways too. Last year, Red Cross provided nearly 13,600 case services to U.S. service members, veterans, and their families, collected more than 80,000 units of life-saving blood, and trained more than 8,800 people in life-saving skills. Whereas their work to prevent and alleviate human suffering is vital to strengthening our community's resilience, we dedicate the month of March to all those who continue to advance the noble legacy of American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, who lived by her words, quote, "You must never think of anything except the need and how to meet it." We ask others to join in this commitment to give back in our community. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, proclaim March 2022 as American Red Cross Month in the City of Charleston. Katerina? Yeah.
I'll say a few comments. I was not aware of who was going to be before me. And I'm from Sweden, for those of you who don't know. So I've been very privileged the way I grew up. And many of us here are privileged because we are at the giving end and not receiving end of the Red Cross. Not everyone is that lucky. I do remember as a child in our ancestral home, which is very close to the Norwegian border on the Swedish west coast, we had this little room that we used as extra guest room. And behind the drape, there were all these military clothes hanging, mainly the ones with camouflage for snow. It looks like little sheep's wool thingies. And I tried to understand what they were doing there, because we're not at war, and I knew that. My ancestors helped the Norwegian resistance movement because they were very active fighting the Nazis in Norway. And they could cross the border to Sweden and hide in our archipelagos and in our woods. And that's what some of my ancestors were actually helping with. So I understood already then the importance of what had been going on during the Second World War. And I'd like to say a few words about Ukraine from a Red Cross perspective. One of the reasons why Red Cross has been so successful in aiding during all wars throughout decades, it's because it's a non-political organization. We cannot afford to be political. I get a lot of questions, and not just myself, by Red Cross in these times. Why aren't you making statements about Ukraine? Because we will not put our people, staff, and volunteers in danger. So right now, there are people in Ukraine who are facing the very tragic dilemma of, should they leave their home country to keep their families safe and actually flee into Russia? Because they're so close to the Russian border that that's the safest thing for them to do. The Red Cross is on both sides of those borders helping all these families who have to leave everything. And it's the same in some other places, obviously, other borders towards the other countries. So I just wanted to say that. Also want to talk about a few facts. I want to thank the city of Charleston for being such a great supporter of the Red Cross and the county and the community. We actually ran about almost 4,000 blood drives, collecting 80,000 units last year. And as you know, when you donate blood through the Red Cross, the money we get for selling that to the hospitals go back in, and that's how we can help. We aided directly 1,200 people, and we responded only in the low country to almost 400 disasters. This is a non-evacuation year. Remember, we had some years where we had to evacuate twice, where we keep people in shelters for a really long time. But 360 disasters, for someone, it is real. And then, of course, we do aid financially directly. Some, Mayor Tecklenburg mentioned a few during the fires. Last year, it amounted actually to $250,000. So it's a lot. So again, thank you for your support. Thank you for running blood drives. I look forward to continued strong and great cooperation. And again, most of us are privileged because we're at the giving end. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so next up is our public hearings. We have a few of those this evening, and I believe Christopher Morgan, or in this case, Julia Copeland, might be presenting these to us, and then we will allow the public to make comments, 2 minutes limit on those comments. Number one, Julia.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, evening, Mayor and Council. Okay, so this is the public hearing on the road abandonment of Ackerman Court. This is in relation to Courier Square Phase 2, which they're still in the early planning stages, but this is one of the phases that they need to get through. This is along Line Street and King Street with St. Philip. It's half of the block. So they petitioned for the road abandonment on September 17th, 2021. Public Works Committee heard this in October of 2021 and approved it moving forward. So this is the public hearing stage here. Tom O'Brien asked me to let you all know that we sent out notices to all utility companies. And Dominion is the only one that responded with a request that they have the potential for an easement for overhead secondary lines at 236 St. Philip, but that could actually change once the actual plans are developed. So that's where we are. Also, just so you know, the road is adjacent to a piece of private property owned by the Canes. And the developer was working with them privately to try and work out a settlement, but now we've just decided to go ahead and cut the road in half, give half to the Canes for their property, and then the other half would go to the developer as the process normally plays out. Any questions? All right,
Would
thank you.
anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Mr. Mayor, what's the time limit?
2 minutes.
I went to county council meeting. And all my old friends in the county who appointed me many years ago as Anthony Bryant, Charleston County Board of Zoning Appeals with the Board of Adjustment before that. And so I filed several complaints against the Post and Courier. You got a lot of property downtown, and maybe they can do a homeless shelter. But my name is Anthony Bryant, and Administrative Officer of the United States Courts. And I filed a complaint, a lawsuit and protest against the Evening Post Industries and the influence over this body in referring people's names and indirect initiatives to law enforcement. I want to be very clear on something on freedom of speech. I told Teddy Priors, with your speech, it's vitally important when you put your speech out there that your speech can be given to liars and local, state, and federal police that can lie to people and other people about you and deny you your constitutional rights. So that's why I'm against the Post and Courier. Vote however you want to. I'm gonna file more complaints on it.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard? All right, it comes to council. A motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 2.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I need to get my slides. All right. So this is E2. It's a rezoning. It's on Meeting Street. This is on Meeting Street right near where the I-26 off-ramp comes into the downtown. It is a combination of 5 different parcels, 3 of which are owned by the applicant, as well as 2 that are owned by the city. They're going to be part of an ultimate development on this site. We're going to have parcels 459, 05, 04, 077, 078, and 079 move from the accommodations district A1 to the A4. That would allow for a 100-room hotel. And we would also include properties that are owned by the city, which are parcels 216 and 222, adjacent to the south, coming up to in line with where that Cooper Street right-of-way could be. Those will also be part of that A4 accommodations overlay. I'll show you some images of the site. This is in our comprehensive plan as our city center designation for the most intense type of development. Here's an aerial image. It's currently vacant property. It's next door to the Grace Homes. And ultimately there will be an alleyway worked out between the Grace Homes and this property that will connect with Cooper Street. And here's another image of the property. And another image from Lee Street at Meeting. And here we have across the street and across the street south of Cooper. And this is just some information on what the accommodation zones are. And again, this would allow for the 100 room on the site. And the Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0 for these changes.
All right, would anybody like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
This will probably be a standard comment. Anthony Bryant again. Anthony G. Bryant versus the administrative officers of the United States Attorney Courts, because 130 federal judges in this country have not disclosed their stock exchanges, their trades and family members. And so this is like, we want to know whether or not any of you have any interest in anything coming before this body now. If you're gonna come at the mayor, we need to know if everybody got any conflicts of interest on all these. So this is your constitutional responsibility to fully disclose us whether or not you got interest in this as well.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, I am Richard Gow with LS3P. I'm here for Mr. Patel. I just wanted to say that Mr. Patel purchased this property many, many years ago and held off on the potential development until the city worked a lot of things out. And it's a great location. It's a gateway site if there ever was one, and a hotel, a welcoming building would be an awesome use for this particular location. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So,
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Anybody else want to be heard though from the public? If not,
I just want to ask Mr. Gower really.
oh, yeah. Councilmember Seekings.
Have you gotten far enough along in the process to think about how you're going to park this?
We have a plan to park the cars within the building.
Okay, I figured.
So I'll open up to questions from council. Councilmember Greg.
So would the city be selling those other two parcels to this particular developer at some point in the future? Is that the plan?
Are we selling any properties?
There are two properties that they mentioned that the city owns. Will the city be selling those? Does anybody have clarification on?
I think probably Christopher has the best understanding.
And that would be
what
my
might
understanding is that
proposed.
those would be sold, assuming the rezoning happens and all terms are met.
So go back to the map, if you don't mind, Christopher, that shows all the parcels. And just share with us.
So if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Correct. And then it's a thought that we open up Cooper Street.
That could be a possibility in the future.
So these two are city parks.
and so just to be clear, part of the anticipation is that there will be a partial sell and it'll be partial that it'll be a land swap so that we can do an alley between the Grace Home site and where the hotel is proposed so that can connect there. And then, as the mayor had mentioned, create some connectivity between Cooper and Meeting Street. So it's anticipated that it'll be a mix of a land swap between the city properties and the landowner's properties with, there may be some portion left over for sale, for clarity.
Any further question? Councilmember Saccharin and then Mitchell.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Mitchell and then Saccharin.
No, the property, it was in, we are talking about now, it's in the district I represent. That property that was approved a long time ago was approved. We were just waiting to get so the city can get some other things, entities together. But this was always approved, and the owners, I have spoken to them a lot. I had them go before the neighborhood association, which they did. The neighborhood association didn't have a problem with it. So that's why we went and had it approved during that time. So it's waiting for the city to finish up what they needed to do, and that's why it's back here today. But the neighborhoods, the community is satisfied with it. And so once the community is satisfied with it, I don't have a problem with it. And they'll be working with the community and doing some other things also. So that's another plus for the community on the east side. So that's all I need to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Mayor. So maybe this was discussed, but just for my own edification, moving from A1 to A4, what does that mean?
It goes from allowance for 50 room in to 100 room in.
Okay. And to Councilman Mitchell's point, this was already approved.
The accommodations and the 50 room in on the 3 parcels that are there meeting to the north, yes.
Gotcha.
But it's adding in the other 2 that are owned by the city, and then it would become a larger parcel that could accommodate a larger hotel.
Can't wait for another hotel, Councilman Mitchell. These are the questions that, sorry, can I add to that? I mean, these are the questions I get that folks in the general public don't understand that this was approved years ago. So when they see the building of this hotel, I just want to be able to explain to them that, this occurred, not necessarily on my watch, but This was approved previous councils.
The use was.
Yes, the use.
Technically, you're increasing the capacity from 50 to 100, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Right.
Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jason, just to piggyback on that, even if we approve this today, nobody has a right to build a hotel by dint of the fact that they're in the accommodations overlay. They still have to go to the BZA for a special exception for a hotel. So there's a whole nother layer of review and opportunity for public comment. And under the accommodations regulations that have been tweaked several times over the last several years, there's now provisions for affordable housing and all these other different types of things that are put into the framework. So there's another level of review even after this evening. So I just thought I'd put that out there for what it's worth.
Right.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Mitchell.
As a Councilman Appel stated, they already done that. That's already been done. So yes. So it's the next step is really going to start building it. And like I stated, this is attraction for the east side because they are ready for it. They approved it, and they're satisfied with it, even with the home that the housing that we built there. When I pushed to have that done, and that whole track, when I pushed when we voted on this council to have the whole track for affordable housing, and I'm going to make sure while I'm here, you're not going to change. And that's with a couple of words. I fought hard, very hard. I think a lot of you all wasn't here, but I fought hard to make sure that all those property was going to use for affordable housing, since we lost a whole lot of homes in that area. I mean, beautiful homes that when the bridge came down. I mean, a lot of people lost a lot of homes there. And I had a lot of seniors that died because they didn't want to move. And a lot of people didn't know the history of that. The history was that they moved because of the Gilliard Auditorium. They moved because of the September clock, and then they had to move again when the bridge came down. And some of my seniors died because they didn't want to move. So that was a very touchy situation in there. So I wanted to make sure that we knit this community back together by building homes back. It couldn't be, DHEC did that we couldn't build single family homes back. Like I said, multifamily, we can. So that's what we're doing. So you will find there's no yard there for no kids to play in the yard, because they said the DHEC says it's contaminated, so you can't play in the yards and stuff. So that's why most of it's going to be multifamily. So you know that we did the first group, and the second phase is the James Lewis complex is coming up, and that's going to be 18 months to finish that. And once that's completed, then we'll go on to the next phase, which is going to be phase 3. And then we'll see what happened with the property that's going near Morrison Drive. Also, we have South Carolina State University. I'm waiting for that to be through ribbon cutting. We hopefully would have that next month in April, they told me. So the people from Washington, D.C. wanted to come down here to that groundbreak, to the ribbon cutting. So I'm talking with Delbert Foster to make sure that's going to happen. So once we hear that, then I'll be able to let the council know, and they'll be getting some information on that. And that's going to be a historical event. That's the first time in history that a historical African-American university have their presence in the city of Charleston. First time. And so it's not the university itself, but it's a part of it because it's a community center, but it's the community center that's going to serve the community. The whole Charleston community is built right on the east side there, along with the pool that we renovated. So it's a lot of different entities that's happening there to knit that community back together. And that's what I was fighting for a long time. So it's now going to be, it's coming into fruition now. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments, Councilmember Seeking?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I think just looking at this, and if you look at where it is in the world, I really want to applaud the Planning Commission for sort of having some vision on this, having seen what's been going on around in that area. I mean, you could build a whole bunch more apartments up there, or right there where you get off of I-26 at the Meeting Street ramp, you're going to have an accommodations use right there. And it seems to me it fits in really well, and I think the neighborhood saw that as well. I think I'm right about this, Mr. Gow, that right across the street used to be the old Thunder Guard. Next block up. Next block up.
The old what?
Right there, the Thunder Guard, right there. Yeah. So right catty corner where you're going to be. So some commemoration of memorialization of that in the lobby or would be really great. So anyway, but I think this is really actually going to fit in right to that gateway comment that you made. It's a good use.
The Thunder Guard also is being renovated, that particular building with the Thunder Guards. I had so many friends there. I couldn't ride no motorcycle, but anyway, I used to go there. But they have a lot of, that's being renovated now. It's a a business, I think, coming off at Hanover Street will be moving there. They'll be leasing that particular Thunder Garden building, so they're renovating it now. And then we also have another hotel might be coming that was approved years ago on the corner of Hughie and Meeting Street. And he was approved before any one of these other hotels was built. I don't know what's taking them so long, but he had some problems. And I think he still might build a hotel. I don't know, but that's $1. So I hope I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm just waiting for him to come back to me because he was turned down by the BAR and then he went back and had a conceptual agreement, so approval. So I don't know what's happening right now with it. So that's another hotel might be coming right by I-26 as you go up to going to Mount Pleasant. So we're waiting for that. So there'll be another hotel coming if they're still planning to do it.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none for first reading, all in favor, please say aye. Oh, pardon me. Oh, we need a motion on the floor first. I thought we had one. We have a motion to
Second.
approve and a second. Any further discussion, question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is number 3.
And this is the one I think Mr. Mitchell was also referencing. It's same owner just up the street at Meeting and UG Street. And this is a request to rezone the actual corner parcel at 590 Meeting Street. It's about 1/4 acre to go from general business and the 5-story Old City Height District to Upper Peninsula, which is our UP district, and the 4 to 12-story Old City Height District. And also to add the accommodations classification. And so on this site, this is already in UP and the 412 district, and the hotel has been approved in this location and been through BZA. Now they would like to add in this parcel into the UP zoning and the same height district and allow for that hotel to cover across both these properties. And that would then necessitate another visit to the BZA for a new special exception on that. But that is the request here. And just to give you orientation, of course, UG Street is running east-west here roughly. There's new apartment building, catty corner, the Grace homes owned by the Housing Authority or to the directly across Meeting Street. There is a relatively recent church to the south that's going to be redeveloped into an apartment complex. And then to the north is another hotel that was approved a number of years ago that has not yet started construction at the northeastern corner of UG and Meeting. This is in our city center area in the comprehensive plan. And then the aerial image shows there's an existing 1-story structure that's in a dilapidated condition here. There's a view of it from the street. And here's the intersection looking south on Meeting Street. And here it is looking east on UG Street. And that is catty corner, the new apartment complex there, the Meeting Street lofts. And the Planning Commission did review this and recommend approval 5-0.
Would anybody like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
Anthony Bryant again, G. Bryant, versus administrative officers of the United States courts for 130 federal judges that didn't pay and disclosed fully their trades. For the record, I had my first home on Hughie Street. I sold my house to a church on Hughie Street years ago. And it was a name by a guy named Quadro Campbell and Anthony G. Bryant, who was on Carolina Gang with Warren Pepper and Mr. Seekins and Miss Sin. And they talked about what was going to happen really to Black people, right? That the market, the unintended consequences of the market would wipe us out because we don't get capital, we don't get any capital, we don't get good insurance. So therefore the market wiped us out. That's the unintended consequences of markets. That's Adam Smith and Thomas Sowell. Okay, so I'm sick and tired of hearing Black people sit up in council chambers and act like the market didn't devastate us. Now we've even reduced the racial commissions, brick and mortar, closed by glass with bad memories, historical nightmares, but that's not helping nobody right now.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, Richard Guy with LS3P representing the Montford Group. Mr. Patel did acquire the corner, and that's why there's been a delay. This thing has gone to BZA, but it's going to have to go back because they're going to make it a mixed-use building. It will have some residences, a few number, so it won't have to be in that zone, but it'll be covering all the affordable housing, all those other requirements through the hotel ordinance that the city has in place, so. And Mr. Patel did say that whatever we need to do to make Hugh G Street wider in that corner better, he's all in, as long as it's 50 square feet or less. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Gal?
Yeah, just real-
Councilmember Appel.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quickly, the property that we just considered prior, that'll have to go back before the BZA, correct?
I believe it will.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I didn't want to misspeak.
We had a lot of drawings, but obviously,
You want your 100 units, you got to
yeah,
show that.
BZA wouldn't have seen it if you didn't have the zoning for it. So you had the order right.
That's what I figured.
Mr. Gal, can I ask you a question as well? At this point, I know UP has a lot of flexibility with the height. Do you know what y'all are planning to do in terms of the height for both this parcel and the newly acquired parcel?
So a lot of that came up in the planning commission meeting, and Mr. Patel has told us that he doesn't need to go more than 5 stories along Meeting. As you know, all along Meeting Street, the height is lower at the street and steps up into the property. He has every intention of following that normal pattern in the city. And we just need for those to connect because the line is going to be a little bit, we don't know exactly where it is because it's not fully designed. We just need to get the zoning so we can proceed with the design work.
Thank you. Councilmember Seeking.
Thank you, Richard.
And then
Don't go-
Mitchell.
Is that the UP zoned parcel? Is that the old Chase property? It is? So y'all who haven't been here for a long time, you know what was proposed to be there within the last decade and in the time that 3 of us at least on this council sat here, Mayor? Do you know what was proposed to be there? A shooting range. A shooting range. So we have come a long way from a shooting range to UP zoning. Anyway, again.
I did not
think-
know that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, well, I think you all see everything that's happening in the district I represent, but that particular parcel there was owned by Chase, and they came to us with a shooting range, and we made sure we turned that down, because we had so much shooting going on in the community before. So I told them, there's no way we're gonna put a shooting range there. And that parcel, Chase, they came to me, and I had a meeting with the neighborhood association, Greater Refuge Church, the minister across the street, and some people in the community, just let them know what was happening in that particular area, what was going to happen. And then he sold it. So anyway, after he sold it, went to Mr. Patel, and I meet with him all the time and let him know exactly what we are looking for in that particular area. And he's working with me. Anything I want to see there, that's what's going there. And I told him, I said, no, we're not going too high. I think, really know how I go. I said, it's not too high. We're not going too high there. And that's part of the neighborhood association came to me, the president, we met with the president, met with us too. We all met across the street and with Greater Refuge during that time when Chase had it. And then after Chase sold, then it came back, but it still was going to be a hotel regardless. And I think Mr. Patel is going to do a mixture there with some housing there. There's going to be some affordable housing there along with the small boutique hotel there. And then, so that's the changes that we made to put some housing there, because I told him I would like to see some housing in that particular area. So some people there can still be able to live in that particular area there. So that's the way it is right now.
All right, there's another member of the public who would like to be heard on this matter. Yes, sir.
Evening, Mohammed Idris. I want to thank you, Councilman Waring. You're doing a good job. You know, when you first came here, me and you was in a fight. Somebody told me a lie, and I'm a reporter. And I reported what they said, and you straightened it out. So God bless you. You know, God have a way of showing people things. We have a good police chief, Randall Luther, good police chief. I work with him like I work with Reuben Greenberg. May God please be pleased with him. You know, the chief got his leg cut off, his right leg cut off. That represents the law. Now the law got its right leg cut off. So when I look at that as a sign, I'm seeing that our city is being shown that the law the law is being run on one leg because they got the other one cut off, the right one cut off. When in this council chairman here, and I've been coming down here close to 30 years, when people weren't, or many of you all wasn't here, they said the hotel wasn't going up but 3 stories. 3 stories. Now, the poor people can't even stay on the peninsula because the hotel is going up 10, 15 stories. And they keep on telling the lie over and over. And we think that the flood is not going to hit this city here. We are crazy because we are doing wrong over and over again. I mean, we continue doing wrong.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, the matter comes to council.
So move.
Any questions or comments? Councilmember Parker.
I think I do. I just need to, just because these are a lot. These are a lot. I don't know if I need to do, but again, I lean on my fellow council members. This is your district, Councilmember Mitchell. I lean on you for that. If like you said, if the community supports it, I certainly have not done enough research into this to you know, I wouldn't know. So I mean, I have to lean on you for this.
This was done for a while back.
Councilmember Mitchell.
This was done for a while back. And that piece of property up front you see was years ago, it was a beauty shop. The little piece right there on the front. Ebony Beauty Shop, long years ago. See, I grew up around there, so I can, long years ago. So then it was closed, must be for what, 7, 8, 9, 10 years? And so they eventually, the young man who owned it, had owned the pizza business, I think, and then he finally sold it to Mr. Patel, who bought the property that Chase had. So that's how he joined both together, because it was sitting right there next to it. And next, the blue area you see is the church. That was Eastside Baptist Church. They have moved out of the peninsula. He sold that too. That's going to be housing there in that blue area right next door to it. And that's going to be renovated pretty soon. But he is still letting the church use it. The owner who bought the church, letting the church use it because they're building a church on Cross County Road. So I met with them. So all this has already been done in that particular area. So it's going to be housing in that blue area. All housing is going to be in that blue area there. And so all that's been approved and everything through the BR and everything before. But we just right now getting the hotel, that small hotel there. And across the street, Mr. Mayor can point to that. There is another hotel that was approved, must be 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And that was Buck, more than 10 years ago. It might have been 10 years ago. That's the one Buck on Councilman Seeking. And that was the first hotel approved in the peninsula before any of these other hotels was approved. But then I think he just kind of draw back on it. I don't know what he's doing with it yet, but it was approved. He got conceptual agreement. First, he didn't like the design. The BAR didn't like the design, so we had to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And they gave him a conceptual agreement on the conceptual approval on the design, but he still haven't started anything yet. So I was meeting with these people like 10, 15 years ago with all these things like that.
Any other questions or comments? So I have a question. Just want to review
Yes, sir.
I think these numbers here indicate the heights that
Yes,
are
sir.
allowed. This is 4 stories on the property that the housing authority owns.
Yes, sir.
And so this would be 5 stories for this future development, right?
Mhm.
And this is 5 right now. I
that
counted
one-
them when you showed the
That one may
picture.
go to 6 at
But-
certain parts of it. Yes, sir.
And this one can go to 8.
Yes, sir.
So UP allows 4 up to 12, right?
Yes, sir. If they earn the points.
And,
Yes, sir.
and so I certainly honor the comments that they plan to keep this at 5 stories and step up. But it does concern me that a future owner or someone down the road might do something different. That could be a long time from now, but it's unlikely that this property across the street is going to change because those are kind of historic houses and they're only 2 or 2.5 stories high. And if somebody ever put a 12-story something here on the corner, I think it would be out of step, out of character. So is there some way to limit the height, give them what they need on the zoning, but to limit the height on it, just to make sure that step back and step up occurs?
Because it's a standard rezoning, council can't put conditions on it. If it was a PUD or something like that, you could. They'd have to earn 12 stories through the point system, which would be difficult, because a lot of points go to things like, open spaces and things like that. And it's such a tight site, it would be tough to provide enough open space to get to 12 stories, for example. So I think it's going to be difficult. I think that while BAR can't take the height away, I think they would be encouraging them to respect the building that's to the south that has the 5 stories and the buildings that are across the street that are 2 stories there. As Mr. Gal said, the individual who owns it now, Mr. Patel, does not have an intention of going above 5 stories on it.
But is there even a setback requirement from the street? I mean,
the only requirement as far as setbacks is that you have to have at least I think if you go above 5 floors or maybe 6 floors, you have to have at least a 10-foot sidewalk, which the sidewalks there are pretty narrow. So you'd have to be backing up a little bit for that. Now BAR can kind of mold and ask them to create some more spaces, things like that too. Yes, sir.
And to let y'all know, and I think Mr. Gow mentioned this, that there's a little taking that's contemplated by the highway department when they do the UG streetscape. So I think they're planning on taking 10 feet on the corner. I don't know if it wraps all the way down to the end of the property line. Do you know?
I learned of this just yesterday, and when Mr. Morgan said it would be about 50 square feet, and Mr. Patel said, if that's what the city needs, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. It's a DOT project, I think, but still, I mean, it's a public use.
And Mayor, I
Thank
think
you.
what probably would be happening with that is, notice how the DOT has extra right of way here at this diagonal. So I would imagine there's going to be some sort of diagonal to make that curve easier.
All right.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
And see,
Councilmember Mitchell.
All on UG Street, we're still talking about the streetscape. And they're still working with the
On UG Street, yes,
on
sir.
UG Street itself. They're still talking about the streetscape, and they're talking with the pastor of Greater Refuge Church, because he's going to have to give up a little space. And I think they have worked something out with him so far, I believe. And also they want to give it the abandonment of it's the end of what's that, Hanover Street or something, Hanover Nassau Street.
Yep, split.
Giving that back, the dead end, let's give it over to them, if he give that piece. The abandonment, just give him that piece of street in the back, so he'll have that, he can drive it back and turn around and come back out. So all that's in that particular area there. But see, you have 2 different neighborhood associations. Once you cross UG Street to the north, that's East Central. So when you on the south side, it's the east side.
I see.
So you have that street split 2 different neighborhood associations in that particular area. So that's Ms. Jenkins on that side, and you have a new president on the east side. So I had to work with both of them to make sure that they are in agreement with this, even though they might not in that district represent that district, you're still butting them, they're closer like neighbors. So you still have to work together with one another.
Gotcha. All right. Councilmember Waring.
Mr. Mayor, I got one basic question. If we don't want to give 12 stories, why would we, if we don't want 12 stories, why we have that in front of us?
I think it's because what Mr. Morgan
The
just
UP
described.
district, all properties that we've zoned UP go to the 412 district. That's a height district that was set up just for the UP zoning, because you have to earn the heights above 4 stories via the points of the UP zoning for, like, again, putting affordable housing in, putting in public spaces, putting in accoutrements for bicycles.
I understand that, Mr.
Yes, sir.
But we don't have an alternative that would be shorter.
That's what I was asking.
I know.
Yeah.
not that works with the UP district. It's a specially put together zoning district that has that 412 district.
Can we amend that zoning district that would allow for a lower height?
We have not done that before. I don't know.
I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
the situation, it's gonna be overpowering being 12, potentially 12 stories. He has the right to do it. Whether he'll do it or not, it's his discretion. But under our ordinance, once we vote this, he'll have the right to do it. Why don't we have something in our zoning ordinance? Now, if that means we need to do it at a later date, that does what the mayor's actually saying. I mean, we want to go forward with this thing, but potentially, and 12 stories is overpowering on that corner.
I don't think it would ever happen, but I agree with you that I think we ought to modify UP so that in cases like this, we can set a limit.
I agree.
Frankly.
That's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Councilman, where are you talking about the, we're talking on Hughes Street now?
The corner of Hughes and.
Yeah, and that's when I spoke with them, I told them, and even the previous owner, if they go up higher than 4 to 5 stories, I'm not gonna support it. And I told them at the beginning, I said, so this is what happened. We still need to complement with something mechanism.
Yes,
with
sir,
the
but
UP.
zoning is a right.
Yeah, with the UP.
Once they get it.
Yeah, with the UP zoning, so.
And if they were to sell it,
Yeah.
somebody else would have that.
UP
Who may
zoning.
not have the verbiages that agree to with you. That's right.
Any other questions or comments?
Comment, man. You the zoning boy. You the zoning boy.
All right, Councilmember Brady.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was just, maybe it's for my own edification. So what do you get under UP that you wouldn't have under general business in terms of zoning uses, since GBs generally are most broad?
So
other than the height district,
the uses are the same, but it would give them the ability to build across the lot lines because it's going to be complicated. And I'm not quite sure how it would happen if we had both a general business and a UP zone property that were part of the same project, because their interest is building across this property line. And so I don't know how we would logistically handle that, because you'd have this portion that was the UP zoning earning its height through the different points. And then the GB is just automatic. At present, you've got 5 stories there.
well, if they want to go across the property lines, why wouldn't you just put it through as a PUD?
That is possible. It's just more complicated and it would take more time.
All right. Well, I'm going to vote to give this first reading, but I'm going to ask our staff to come back to us with a revision of UP zoning to allow some flexibility on height allowance in cases like this. And I don't plan to give it a yes vote on second or third reading until we have that approved. I think the timeline of the project is such that would be okay. I hope so. But I think it's appropriate for us to limit it at that corner myself. Just. All right, Councilmember Seekins.
I would just ask that as you do that, let's do an analysis on this lot vis-a-vis the UP zoning. I don't believe, and I haven't looked at the particulars of it in a while, but there's no way they're going to get enough points to get anywhere near 12 stories. Secondly, remember, this is not in 3 dimensions. What's going to be across the street, what's right behind the northern parcels there is the on-ramp to the highway and the highway. So is looking at it and a project like that, I mean, it's not going to block anything other than a highway if it goes to 5 or 6 stories. And right there across the street, you counted, Mayor, on the street face, but actually if you go back behind, it goes up a couple more stories as the ramp comes back behind it. So I think if we're going to go redo a whole zoning district, let's look at this lot first before we go and undo a whole zoning district. And also, Christopher, if I'm not mistaken, almost all the parcels in the UP zoning district, which is principally along Morrison Drive, are entitled, built, or under construction, right? We don't have that many left.
There are a few,
but not many.
Not as many, yeah. Yes, sir.
Right.
Being across the street from this, because I think that would be just kind of the character. And I agree with you. I don't think you can earn it, but we got time, and we can make some adjustments. So we'll see where that leads us.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Mitchell.
this is the last time, but all that housing you see across the street, the white buildings,
Yes, sir.
that's the housing authority. All that's going to be torn down.
No, not the white ones. The ones behind there
Yeah,
are
the one
being
behind is
torn
gonna be
down.
torn, and they're
These white
renovating.
ones are gonna stay.
They're gonna renovate those one there, but behind it's gonna be torn down. I don't know how high they're gonna go up. The
4
housing
stories.
authority.
Yeah.
4 stories.
4 stories?
Yes, sir.
See, they're gonna be higher in those.
Right. All right, so we got a motion on the floor to approve this, just giving it first reading. And I'm going to call the question. What's that? Well, it can. I'm going to do that anyway. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gregg. Councilmember Shealy. Councilmember Saccharine. Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Brady.
Nay.
Councilmember Gregory. Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings.
Aye.
Councilmember Shade. Councilmember Bowden. Councilmember Appel. Councilmember Parker. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right, so. We ask that you silence all electronic devices in this room, please. Okay, number 4. Or are we just on number 3? We're on number 4.
Yes, sir. E4. So, let me go back. This here. So this is a property on Wapu Road, 1224 Wapu Road in West Ashley. It's a third of an acre parcel. It's actually 2 parcels that comprise a third of an acre. And its request is a rezoning from general office to commercial transitional. Now, this was an item that was recommended for disapproval by the Planning Commission. I think there were concerns about impacts to the neighborhood here. There was no one from the neighborhood who spoke on this. I don't know if anybody will be here tonight or not, but I did want to outline a few things to kind of explain why staff was supportive of this request. And that is that essentially Wapu Road in this location is a commercial street. All the parcels that front on it in this block and the blocks to the north are commercially zoned. The area in blue that you see there is actually a Charleston County overlay that allows for I think they call it commercial, let's see. Commercial core is in blue, and the areas that are in crosshatch over here are light commercial in the county. And then in the city, we have general business commercial across the street, residential office to the south, limited business to the north, or I'm sorry, general office to the north, and then general business at the corner of Sam Rittenberg and Wapu Road. So there is a real mix of commercial zonings. There are some former houses that are here that are commercially zoned, and some are utilized in a commercial fashion, some are still residences. But the commercial designations have been in this area for a good while, at least 20 to 30 years, I would estimate. The county's overlay went on top of properties that I believe were already commercial, but it was implemented probably 7 or 8 years ago. So it's been a good while. There has been commercial in this corridor. I'll show you some images of it. This shows up in our suburban designation. So that does allow for limited commercials such as CT, which is what the applicant is requesting here. Here's an aerial image of the property. And then here you see it from the street. It's currently an office. It has parking to the side of it, has a sign out in front. So you get a sense of what's going on in the area. This is looking down Wapu Road. Again, you see the subject property with the sign on the left. The building on the right is zoned general business, although it may still be residentially zoned. It is zoned general business. And then there's the subject property on the right again. And so Planning Commission did recommend disapproval, but from a staff standpoint, we felt like it was an appropriate request because it's a commercial corridor here.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard? Yes, sir.
I'll be simple.
I support staff's position. I served on the board many, many years ago. These overlay districts are very problematic. And based on the fact that you're allowing other uses to be approved tonight, large uses to be approved tonight, it's going to absorb a lot of water, a lot of sewer, a whole lot of stuff. Why would this small business suffer because of something happened 20 years ago? Because these entitlements all run together for 20, 30 years. So why not just approve this and move on?
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, evening. My name's Keem McLaughlin. I'm representing John and Jean Peters. Jean Peters runs it's Jean's Workshop, which is basically a high-end window fabrication and drapery shop. She makes curtains. They currently have an operation on Sam Rittenberg, as well as the studio at this particular site right here. They want to co-locate them and bring them together. So that's why we're seeking a rezoning. We searched for alterations, fabrication, manufacturing within the zoning code. We couldn't really find anything that was suitable in the GO category, so why we're looking for CT. We're fabricating window coverings, draperies is what we're doing. I don't think that's going to be too intensive a use. Architecturally, the corridor is pretty much already commercial, so we see no reason why to disapprove this. We feel that we're going to actually add some positive attributes to the area. Going to bring the building forward, build a small area, add on to the building behind, so that all the work can be done in one area. When you look at the street, there's already a couple of there's a gas station, a couple of title shop areas, and a warehouse that does some sort of MMA wrestling. So I think our use is very appropriate to the area. That's what we're caught up on is, I guess, use and context. I think our context and character is very appropriate, and I think the use is very appropriate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard? Seeing none, the matter comes to council. All right, Councilmember Parker, then Shade.
I did just a quick question. Did you say there was going to be construction on the property?
Excuse me, no, this would be, eventually we're going to have to build a larger facility.
Okay.
That's the only construction we're going to have, but the use will be fabrication of curtains is what we're looking at
Right.
long-term.
And so the building, are there building restrictions with this, the new?
In the CT district, yes, ma'am. There are
Okay.
square footage limitations. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Morgan, would you explain to council the difference between a commercial and a commercial transition? What's the difference in the two classifications?
You mean the general office? and
General
commercial?
office, I'm sorry.
So the
And-
general office that it's currently zoned would just allow office type uses and office type activities. Hence the reason that the design studio can't locate there if they're going to have the stitching of drapes and things like that, the seamstress type work. So in CT, you can have limited commercial type uses. There are square footage limitations. You can have small restaurants, but in an instance like this, you wouldn't be able to have outdoor dining because of the close proximity of residential zoning. You can have offices, you could have residential, things like that, but it's a transitional type of commercial that we feel is appropriate when you've got adjacent residential units.
And Donna Jacobs was on the planning commission. I talked with her about this, and her concern, and it was a unanimous vote to disapprove, was that a subsequent owner could take this property and change it from a drapery shop to something more, and I think invasive is what they were concerned about. So this cannot be used for other purposes such as a shooting range, an indoor shooting range. It can't be a liquor store there. And there's a whole host of things that are prohibited from being under this new CT, right?
Correct.
So down the corner from this, Councilmember Pell, is that the nefarious operation called Pell Vision from over here. What the concern is, and I talked to Ms. Jacobs about it, the concern is that this backs up into this old neighborhood called Pinecrest. And as Mr. Morgan has pointed out, it's spotted because some of the properties in the county, some of it's in city jurisdiction. So you've got this sort of mixed zoning going on with it. But it is commercial on both sides of the street. There are residences that come close to this. This was built as a residence. Right now, I believe it's a commercial use being taken place in there. So it looks like a shop of some sort, retail shop going on. This does not violate the spirit of Plan West Ashley. We double checked that. This is going to be, it seems to be a very non-invasive type of manufacturer, which is grapes, which is a pretty cool thing to do, an old-fashioned industry things of sorts. So I think this is okay to change this zoning. Let's allow this to be used. This is a local industry, and we're trying to provide economic opportunities in West Ashley. This is a golden opportunity to do that. So I'd urge all to go ahead and support the rezoning.
All right, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Waring?
A lot of years ago in the corner of Mootrie and Rutledge, I bought a vacant lot, had it rezoned to commercial transitional because it was abuts a residential area. Commercial transition is designed to do just that. Limits, you can put a florist there. In this case, it's drapery shop. It has control hours of operation, so nobody can be working there 11, 12 o'clock at night. It's designed to go from high impact to a limited commercial use as you progress into a neighborhood. This, for anyone who knows, is a highly traveled, it's a little short 2 blocks, but a ton of traffic goes through there, okay? I wouldn't want my kids playing in the front yard on Walpoo Road right there. So I being 17 years on the planning commission, really don't like to go against them. But I think in this case, I agree with Councilman Shahid on this one. If you go up to the higher Rose area, north of that, where you see the bigger building with the CC on it, that used to be the old Marita bread place. And you had delivery trucks going in and out of there all the time. Yes, sir, right there, all the time. And that was there for decades. So if that neighborhood can grow and thrive with the Marita Bread Company being there, with delivery trucks coming and going, they can survive with a drapery shop. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. Would this property, when they add on to the building, be subject to the design review board?
I believe that Walpoo Road has review. I would have to check that, Mayor.
He's shaking his head, yes.
Yeah.
He's checked it already. Well, that's good. All right. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up, number 5.
Okay, and this is on Folly Road. This is 1144 and 1150 Folly Road. It's 8/10 of an acre between the 2 parcels. They're currently zoned RO, and the request is to go to limited business. To orient you to the area, the Walmart on Folly Road is just a little bit further south and across the street. There is a retail center directly across the street that's zoned limited business. There's residential to the rear, a little bit of a similar circumstance to what we were seeing in the previous case, a vacant commercial lot to the northwest. Show you some images here. This is a little bit broader view. You can see the Walmart is down to the southwest of the property, zone GB. There are parcels on this street that have been zoned to CT as they converted from residence to commercial uses, but then there are also parcels that are in the LB category or the RO category as well. And the town of James Island has had some conversions of properties to commercial uses as well along here. In our comprehensive plan, it's in our neighborhood edge designation, so limited type commercial uses are allowed or recommended in that category. Here is an aerial image. It's 2 former residential structures, one which has already been converted to some office uses as the RO allows for at present. Here they are from the street view. You can see the sign that's out in front for offices. And here's a look down Folly Road. The subject properties are on the left. The retail center across the street is to the right. And this is looking north on Folly Road, some of the other commercial in the area. And to the south, some of the commercial that's converted houses along Folly Road. And again, that's the center that's directly across the street. It's zoned limited business as well. And just the Folly Road overlay requirements, which gives us as staff, extra level of comfort because there are buffer requirements, things like that. And of course, we have design review over any exterior changes on the property as well. This is just a little bit more about what those requirements are. And Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council.
Move for approval.
Motion to approve in a second.
Second.
Any conversations or questions? Councilmember Parker? All right. So, Christopher, if I may ask, so what is the need here? What are they going from to that they need this change of zone?
There are uses that they want to have in the structure, as I understand it, that are not allowed in RO. I believe it's some sort of workout type facility that's not allowed in RO. So they wanted to go up to a more intensive category that would allow it, and LB would allow it.
But LB would also allow many other
Restaurants.
uses, much more extensive.
Yes, sir.
than
It
a
has the limits on hours of operation.
CT. Would a CT not have worked for them?
They did not request CT. There are some CT parcels that are similar to this along here, as well as some LB. The LB still limits the hours of operation. It has limits on drive-throughs, things like that. So we didn't have a huge concern with the difference. The CT does have the square footage limitations, which LB does not. That's probably the biggest difference.
All right, Councilmember Waring.
I agree with the deal on that one. Mr. Morgan, if you look at the two residences behind there on the, I guess that's the western side. I'm sorry, it's northeastern side. Right. Is there some sort of buffer zone?
Yes,
so
sir.
that neighbors won't get surprised at some higher activity behind them?
Yes, sir. The overlay requires a buffer to the rear, and we'll go to that section. It's, let's see, the building height is limited to 35 feet, looking for a minimum 15-foot right-of-way buffers out front, and then a minimum 20-foot vegetated rear buffer is required adjacent to residentially zoned parcels. So they'll have to have a 20-foot buffer at the rear.
Let me ask one other question. Can a liquor store be put in LB?
I would have to go check the codes on that because I know that, you know, liquor stores typically aren't open past like 7 or whatever the state regulates on that. So it could be that it's a use that's allowed, but there are the hours of operation limitations.
Okay, I just wanted to discuss some of those high impact uses for Ms. Parker. You know, that's in your district. So, okay, if you're in favor, I'm good.
All right, anyone else? Councilmember Saccharine.
I just want to, I'm going to support this, but I'm familiar with the owner who's been trying to call in. If there's any questions, you did ask for public comment. He was trying to call in. He was having issues trying to connect. So I'm not sure if there are questions, but he's available. I think he signed up for public comment and then.
He can comment, you know, this is a public hearing.
Yeah,
If he's online.
He's online, but can't connect. He's having technical issues connecting.
Move
No.
for approval.
Okay. I'll second.
I'm sorry, what was the motion?
Oh,
Okay, I thought we had a motion on the floor already,
Yes, we did.
but I'm glad to have another one. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
All right.
This is just first reading. It's just first reading, so if he wants to come make comments to us before next reading, he could.
We didn't have anyone on the list for this item. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving along here. Number 6 is next.
Yes, sir. So this is an ordinance amendment. This is a little bit of an unusual situation because this ordinance amendment comes from the private sector, from a property owner developer in town who is asking for this amendment to our zoning ordinance, which our ordinance does allow for. And of course, it's been reviewed by the Planning Commission, and I'll go into that in a minute. But this is an amendment to our workforce housing districts and opportunity zones that would allow for different off-street parking requirements for different types of residential units. And you should have in your packets the ordinance. What this does is it creates a definition of a small efficiency dwelling unit, a micro unit. And these are things that are being seen around the country, and that the applicant is going to talk to you all a little bit about this, but just so you all know where he's coming from on this, that are typically 250 square feet to 375 square feet, that are in much more limited locations, that are typically in areas where people can walk to more uses, such as grocery stores. And in fact, there is a definition for what a grocery store would qualify as in this amendment, and then info about how close these types of uses would need to be to a grocery store to have the benefit of this amendment for the reduced parking requirement. So it is definitely something that is a new trend in housing around the country and in different areas of the United States, and more urbanized areas. And of course, the city of Charleston is getting more urbanized. Our zoning administrator has gone through these proposed amendments and done a few tweaks that make it fit in our zoning ordinance a little bit better. Our planning commission reviewed it. Their comments, well, I'm not going to go through the applicant provided exhibit here, but the planning commission did recommend approval of this change, and it now comes to council for your thoughts and action.
Would anyone from the public like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Christopher. Jeff Roberts, the developer.
Please speak in the microphone.
Jeff Roberts, the developer. We can no longer design a city around an automobile. Previously, prior to the pandemic, we were planning, and a lot of the council members and certainly planning knows me for years, for multiple decades. We are at the forefront of urban development and have won many awards, done many joint ventures with the city. Prior to the pandemic, we were looking at a property in the medical district that we were going to develop into co-living, which was really luxury apartments that had private bathrooms, 4 bedrooms per pod with community space and kitchens and amenities. And really the market for that was more of a Gen Zer, you know, to use the joking metaphor, latte drinking, skinny jean wearing Gen Zers. But we decided that the city needed a more price approachable type of resident that somebody could live who's making 80–85% of AMI on up and have a private, beautiful little Class A apartment. And the true amenity would be they get to live by themselves. This small efficiency dwelling unit only works in areas that are near the medical district, on a transit line, bicycle, walk to work, walk to a major supermarket. It works in what's in the comprehensive plan of the city center. Again, I said in the medical district, it does not work in a lot of parts of town. It's really made so it's see, we don't have a light rail. So it really is made for people who don't really need to drive. So what we did is we reduced the parking requirement from 1 to 1. We can create 4-bedroom apartments that are sort of co-living, and we need 1 parking spot for those. A hotel is 2 spaces.
Time.
A hotel is 2 spaces for 3 bedrooms. Mixed use is 1 for 4. We think this is perfectly price approachable and brings housing stock to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard? Please come forward. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Erica Harrison, 18 Carolina Street, Charleston, South Carolina. I've had an opportunity to work with Mr. Roberts in the past, and I've worked with other developers, and one of their goals has always been, we need to do more affordable housing, and we look at the ordinance of the mixed-use workforce housing. And sometimes you need a disruptor in the space of housing and development. And this type of ordinance does that. I was looking at the 2020 income guidelines, and if I came back to Charleston in 2004, graduating from law school, and I was making just $1,500 over the area median income at the time, and I lived with my parents for about a year and saved up a little money. And all I wanted was a tiny townhome in Somerville for $130K. And someone said, that's a crazy idea. Why do you not live in Charleston? And that happened. And now I get to live, I'm more invested in a community that I never thought I would be able to afford, that I would never be a part of. And every day, these type of events happen where you have someone who's just over it, but can't actually afford to be here. So just imagine driving to downtown Charleston from Somerville for a year. And what that really means to your actual income and student debt and student loans. And so this type of ordinance solves that problem for the person who's single and just coming out. Because when you bring people to the city, they become invested and they are part of the community. And they do things like I do, which is become active in all parts of our city and our planning and become active members and residents. So this type of ordinance creates the communities that we want to build in the city and makes people invested in our communities. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mayor Tecklenburg, members of council, Charlie Carish, West Ashley resident, member of City of Charleston Planning Commission. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for the honor of being a member of the Planning Commission and I appreciate that. And I want to also take this opportunity to thank staff. Mr. Morgan does a wonderful job, all the staff, and we have a lot of new members of the commission, as you all know, because you all approve them. We're pretty demanding of staff these days and demanding of the affordable housing concerns that we have and the city has. And we totally support this 100%, this micro unit issue. They're more affordable than what people can get. And we feel like it makes a lot of sense. And we know there's no silver bullet to solve this problem. You all know that, we know that. Mr. Waring sat next to me on planning for many years, and we wish we could solve a lot of problems. You guys are gonna help solve them, I know. But we think this is one ingredient that'll help. But we think relying on the private sector is gonna be a key ingredient to solving this problem. We wish we as a city, and we have great people and great staff, would solve it on our own. But we know the private sector is the key because they're the one was investing. So we'd like to have more interaction with them and actually having some dialogue with them about that, about other ideas that we can send to y'all. So we appreciate that and appreciate your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your service on the Planning Commission.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was not going to comment on this at all, but I have some concerns. One concern is what opportunity zone, the federal opportunity zone by Senator Scott, that's opportunity zone. What was there any incentives? He said opportunity zones in the process. What does?
I believe it's federal opportunity.
Okay, federal opportunity zones. Federal opportunity zones does not provide for reporting. It doesn't give accurate reporting in terms of those incentives. Some of the enterprise community, enterprise zones from the 1990s, which led to the redevelopment of the neck area and others. So when someone comes to the body to be able to, again, Anthony Bryant, that's my name, Bryant versus Administrative Office of United States U.S. Courts. Okay, so when someone comes to the body, I'm not privy to what's going on, and say, I'm gonna create an amendment or an ordinance, and this is something new. The question becomes, how many times has this been done before? One, two, the reporting for the opportunity zones and those credits. Secondly, the continuum of care. Now, the city of Charleston has been a part of the continuum of care, economic solution grants since 2013. I mean, I'm coming in 2013 to the Department of Commerce. So the question becomes, is this some special consideration for someone your relationship with in business?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dix.
Yes, Josh Dix. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors, reside at 640 Rutledge Avenue. We're here tonight to speak in favor of this initiative. Small efficiency dwellings are the future. And as we look to reshape how the neck area is zoned, with LCRT coming online in the near future, we need this type of zoning to support the ridership, and we need the ridership to support the housing. So these are the types of ideas that we applaud. We thank you for taking the time to look at these new ways of doing our zoning code, and we look forward to working with y'all in the future on some other housing initiatives. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard? Got a motion to approve. Councilmember Gregory first, then Appel and Parker.
Mr. Mayor, I am definitely going to support this.
I think it's a good way for us to deal with that middle income gap. However, I don't like the process, okay? I don't like the fact that this went to planning and did not come to the Community Development Committee, of which all land use and zoning, okay, consistent with section 2.50. And I'm supporting something that Councilmember Parker was concerned about at our last meeting, okay? How do these things get here without us having some input? I think the fact that we've spent the last hour or so, and I understand there's a need for public hearings, okay? But I think it's very, very important that we follow the process, Mayor. We have a standing committee for community development, and it's clear in the ordinance, in the law, that these kinds of land use, zoning, and development should come through community development. While I support this, okay, I still think that we need to respect the process. Going back to Councilman Appel and Councilman Parker's concern at our last meeting. And this is a prime example, at least to me, okay, where we're not following the process. And we should. We should give community development an opportunity to review the proposed ordinance and make comments accordingly. Us bringing these things to the committee of a whole defeats the purpose of the standing committees. Why have them if we're going to bypass them and planning says yay? Are we necessary? I think we are, but I demand that we adhere to the city codes as it relates to land use, development, zoning, planning, all of it comes through that committee. So for us going to the committee of the whole, I think it's inappropriate without giving the standing committee that's responsible for these an opportunity to review and comment and possibly make it even better. So I just want the record to reflect that this should not continue to happen, that things should go through the appropriate standing committee before it goes to planning, before it comes to the committee of a whole to have an hour-and-a-half discussion on something that we could vet through the standing committee process. I don't know who makes the decisions to bypass the rules, but I think it's time for us to stay focused and consistent with the laws of the city. So I'm just saying this because I think that there was a very, very great concern that was brought up at our last meeting by two of our fellow councilmen. And I think this is an example of the kinds of issues that they were raising. We need to follow the rule. And the rule is clear in section 2.50, that the responsibility lies in the standing committee. I just wanted to make the record clear, Mayor. I mean, I've been fighting for this for years, okay, to make sure that our standing committees have the kind of relevance and importance that they were designed to do. Yes, it means more work, much more work for us. But I think we've been doing pretty good, Mayor, because you've been piling it on. Okay.
And I'm happy for this matter to go to.
I know you are, and I just want to make sure.
I think maybe Mr. Morgan's comment that this came to us by way of a citizen rather than through city staff may have had something to do with that. But
All the
anyway,
more-
I'm glad if y'all want to report it to committee, that's fine.
All the more reason, Mayor.
Yes, yes,
All
sir.
the more reason. I'm not finished. I got
Oh.
10 minutes. I'm not
Yes, sir.
finished.
Oh, I thought you finished. Sorry.
Okay, I mean, I'm saying all the more reason, Mayor, okay? Particularly that it came from a private citizen. And I must admit, I had dialogue, okay, with them back in October, okay? They were the ones keeping me abreast, not staff. It is staff's responsibility to keep our standing committees abreast of what's going on in the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Appel and then Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councilman Gregory. I mean, I cannot agree with you more on what you just said. I mean, I think that it's a shame, frankly, how infrequently the Community Development Committee meets. Councilman Shea had mentioned earlier today, or it may have been Councilman Waring, regardless, I know y'all feel the same way. You know, we talk a lot about the two most important issues facing the city: affordable housing and flooding. Public Works and Utilities Committee meets regularly, every 2 weeks. And we do a lot of really good work. And if you look around, we're making some really good progress on stormwater all over the city. So I think we can make that same amount of progress on the affordable housing issue if we have that Community Development Committee meeting more often, so we can do a little bit more legislating from our seats here. And, you know, we can take a recommendation or two from the report. We could take a recommendation from several of these very, you know, dynamic, we call them, you know, the brain trust. I mean, there's a lot of smart, creative developers in this community. We've heard from one this evening who's done a lot of incredible work in the city. And this is his idea. Nobody understands the market better than the folks that are on the front lines of it every single day. And so I think it's wonderful that we have somebody bringing this very, very exciting, innovative measure forward to advance our affordable housing stock on the peninsula. And it's not coming at the expense of $1 of city money. All he's asking to do is just change our rules so that the law of the market and the economics can work so that developers can actually make money building affordable housing. Let me say that again. So developers can make money building affordable housing. That right there is the ticket that we can solve in this city if we, you know, come up, well, first let's pass this, but come up with some other ordinances very, very much like this so we can really get the private sector engaged on solving this issue. Our comp plan calls for adding 16,000 affordable units in the peninsula over the next decade. You know, we honored Don Cameron here several months ago, and Don's had an unbelievable career leading the Charleston Housing Authority for decades. I think it was close to 40 years. And we talked about at his commemoration, or at his honoring rather, that he had brought 2,500 units of affordable housing to the market in 40 years. Okay, we need 16,000 over the next 10 years. That Charleston Housing Authority, Ms. Shaw Johnson, they do an outstanding work. And this is not to denigrate anything that they do. They need to keep doing what they're doing. But we cannot solve the problem with the public, you know, sort of traditional way of doing affordable housing, which is important. And we can still keep doing that. We have to unleash the private sector on this so that normal people can live on the peninsula. You know, we're going to hear about later on in this meeting, we'll eventually make our way through this agenda, I promise, about, you know, what's with, you know, what's happened with the African-American population on the peninsula. You know, we are all talking about how, you know, in our redistricting conversations, Peninsula's lost a lot of population over the last 10 years. They lost population the 10 years prior to that. Okay, these are the ways that we can start shoring up some of these dynamics by allowing the economy to work in such a way that regular people can afford to live on the peninsula. So firefighters could live on the peninsula, right? Imagine that, normal people living on the peninsula. So we can have a breathing, thriving, dynamic city. So this is a extremely exciting measure. I think that it incorporates a lot of smart, modern, progressive approaches to affordable housing. Jeff Roberts mentioned earlier, sort of by decoupling parking requirements from development. The reason we keep seeing the same type of development, whether it's on the peninsula or it's out in the suburbs, is because our zoning ordinance essentially creates these very, very narrow boxes of where development can be profitable. We need to expand that. We need to get creative with our regulations, and we can start seriously making an impact on our affordable housing stock. So I want to applaud Jeff for bringing this forward and his leadership. Frankly, I think everyone around this room can take some lessons from Jeff. Jeff's legislating. That's our job. He's legislating from the perspective of coming up with an idea, bringing it forward, and moving it through the process. Every single one of us needs to be doing that when it comes to these sort of issues, not just on affordable housing, but everything, working it through the committee process the way it works. So I'd like to challenge us tonight. Let's have a standing community development committee meeting every month. There's absolutely no reason why that committee should not be meeting every month. I think it should be meeting every couple weeks.
Councilmember Appel, they have a regularly scheduled meeting every month.
There is one.
Well, I'm on the committee, and I can tell you, I haven't attended a community development committee meeting in several months.
But the chair.
I don't know where you were.
Well, y'all aren't putting me on the emails then, because
All right.
it's far more infrequent than our other standing committees.
Let's stay on the topic.
So anyways,
please, y'all.
I'm just echoing Councilmember Gregory. So
I'm sorry, I've got a few people in front of you. Councilmember Parker is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councilmember Gregory, I could not agree with you more. I am the prime example of when an ordinance like this, I promise you, when I first read this, I get confused. So rather than talk about what I don't understand, can we make a motion just to put it back into committee and do it? I mean, if that's the process, can I make a motion to move this back to committee so that we can discuss this there and bring it back to council rather than discussing it all tonight?
I believe we have a motion on the floor already to approve. You could make a motion to defer, and then that would take precedence. But unless someone were to withdraw their motion, you couldn't make a.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Or you could wait until after that motion is cleared and then make a new motion to send it to the committee as well.
Okay, who made the motion?
Pardon me, Councilmember Parker.
I wasn't sure who made the motion. I did. Councilmember
Yeah.
Stevens.
Do you want to make a motion to defer?
If you're not going to take it off the floor, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion to defer. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Okay, I'm going to keep in order. Councilmember Shade had his hand up next, and then I'm going to go back to Councilmember Gregory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Morgan, a couple of questions. Is there a geographical or jurisdictional limit as to where these types of units can be constructed?
They would have to be in a location that has the.
Gentlemen, excuse me, gentlemen. Thank you.
Let's speak one at a time, please, y'all.
Go ahead.
They would have to be in a location that has the MU workforce housing or is one of the opportunity zone situations as described in the ordinance.
So that would fall into what areas?
Present, it's on the peninsula. At present, it's on the peninsula.
And the second question I have.
Yes.
Is if this ordinance is approved and someone goes ahead and constructs these units, can they be rented out for short-term rental?
They would have to be in an accommodation situation and treated more like hotel rooms. I believe the intent is, and the applicant may want to respond to this, but the intent is for 30 days or greater. Am I correct on that? Or are you in the accommodations under this?
Mr. Morgan, we never viewed this type of typology anywhere around the city to be accommodations. These are purely like an apartment, just smaller and traditionally about 30-35% less than a studio. And anything that was developed accommodations would have to go through a rigorous accommodations overlay and special exceptions of zoning. So that was never contemplated as a Trojan horse or a backdoor to go into an accommodations play for. small hotel.
I appreciate what the
Thank you.
intent here for this property, but I just want to make sure, because I love this idea. I think it's a great idea, what we're trying to accomplish here. And there was a wonderful New York Times article about this exact type of housing and people taking advantage of it. But so what I don't want to occur if we approve this ordinance, that somehow this gets converted into short-term rental property instead. So if we've got the safeguards on here, that gives me a little bit level of comfort. That's why I was asking the jurisdictional component of this, where it can be included and restrictions on short-term rental. Thanks.
Thank you. Back to Councilmember Gregory and then Councilmember Seekins.
I really think we should take this thing through first reading, because if you go to section 54299.2 of the zoning ordinance, that's really the gut of what is going to be applied here to these units. We have the fee in lieu of. We have a specific percentage of units that would be affordable. So I think that I think we should go first reading, and that gives us 2 weeks to really work out the kink and educate each other with regard to it. Because for me, the concept is a great concept. My issue is more process oriented. I really think we should give this first reading, and I would advise all of my colleagues, when they do have an opportunity to read it again, go to section 52.2992. Okay, that gives you a whole lot more in terms of the wheres and whats with regard to the micro housing.
Councilmember Seekins.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with Councilmember Gregory. And the reason I didn't withdraw my motion is we spent a lot of time working this tonight. Lesson learned and point made by Councilmember Gregory appropriately to follow the process. What I would say is this: I think it's great that we're involving the private sector. Mr. Roberts is well known to us. We've partnered with him many times. And there's lessons learned in everything, Jeff. And one of which is, I think if we come forward, if a citizen or a developer, whoever has an idea like this and has an ordinance in mind, partner with someone on city council just to make sure the process is followed so it goes in the right direction and we don't have this sort of gap. Because we spend a lot of time tonight talking about process, about a really great idea that's ultimately going to get approved, right? So let's give it first reading. Let's send it to Councilmember Mitchell's committee for review with the understanding to talk again about process to make sure we follow it. And let's keep moving forward, not take a step back. Because one of the fears I've got is we withdraw the motion, it gets deferred, we start all over again. And two things, we spend an inordinate amount of time talking about process. And two is we don't get this in place and we need to get it in place. So that's my reason for doing that. So I'm going to vote to give it first reading. I hope you all will do it too. Get the process going. And from now on, those of you out there have great ideas, please include us on the front end so that we can put it in place to get it streamlined. All
right, the motion, Councilman Waring.
Thank you. I second your motion to defer because I thought you wanted to send it to committee. I would agree with giving it first reading and if we send it to the committee.
Absolutely.
Because one question I don't want to answer now, because in committee, I don't understand why if we found the right pocket close to Carter Lines, West Ashley, even James Island, why couldn't we create housing like that? West Ashley or James Island? If it's close to mass transit bus lines. Right now, this ordinance is just on the peninsula. Land is a little bit cheaper, West Ashley, James Island, and downtown. So anyway, if Council Lady Parker would withdraw her motion, I'll withdraw the second. Under the proviso, first reading, and then it goes to the committee, and then we can vet this out.
That's fine.
Sure, I withdraw.
We're going to withdraw the motion to defer. Is that right? Or just you're withdrawing the second?
Is the motion now to approve it? Okay. And defer it to
The motion
committee?
would be to give first reading to the matter at hand. Council member, would you like to be recognized? Councilmember Gray.
my question was whether, so we're voting for first reading and to send it to committee? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Terrific. Any other comments or questions? And I would just concur that some further thought needs to go into this. I commend you for the idea, and generally I'm in accord, but I do want to just bring up one instance, and I asked the committee to really consider this, and I'm looking over at Councilmember Mitchell here, because, for example, at Grace Apartments, which is affordable housing, we reduced the parking requirement, right? And now the units are all filled up. And then those units across the street was a similar situation. And with all the good intentions of people riding their bikes and being able to walk to work and even get to a store and all, I think there's a distinction in workforce housing that everybody's got a car, whether you like it or not. And I do think it's thoughtful that you put in the proposed ordinance that these folks would not be eligible for a neighborhood parking decal. So almost you're putting a little binder on them, but it's not quite as strong as like if you're a freshman at College Charleston, you cannot bring a car, right? When you come live in the dorm. And so the net result though is all that neighborhood down Lee Street, Nassau Street, there's nowhere left to park. Because even though it was a good intention of reducing the requirement to make the housing more affordable, people have cars anyway. And so we just need to be thoughtful about that as it goes to committee. So anyway, I just thought I would add that. Somebody sent me some pictures of the neighborhood the other day, and it's jammed over there, right? Yeah. All right. All in favor of first reading and sending it to CD committee, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we're moving halfway down page 2, y'all. Number 7 now.
Yes, sir. This is 2309 Lazy River Drive in West Ashley. It's a recent annexation, and it would be zoned RR1. This is because it is in the low impact and conserved area of our recommended land uses in the new comprehensive plan. And so we're trying to keep the densities down in those areas, but also allow for what is already a subdivided lot. So it would meet the standards of the RR1 in this location. And both staff and planning commission recommended approval of the RR1 in this location here. And here's an image of the property.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
Anthony G. Bryant. And for the record, I'm not a lobbyist or grassroots lobbyist or working with anybody. I think we need to get some type of ordinance in place for people, for grassroots and direct lobbyists who come in this council chamber, we have relationships with people. We need full disclosure of these relationships. What happened the last committee meeting, last public comment was just not cool. Okay, the reason for this is the 2030 census will be coming up. The 2020 census, you have not done your redistricting yet. The annexation process, I did the annexation public comment to the South Carolina Senate under Greg Hembry. I'll talk about that in my public comment. Now, Mr. Morgan, we need to know how many annexations have led to the illusion of the Black vote, if you can ask that question, of all annexations you've done before this body.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard? Comes to council. We have a second. Any discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 8.
Okay, this one is also in West Ashley. It's at 1517 and 1521 Wapu Drive as opposed to Wapu Road. And these are properties that would come into the city as STR, single and two family residential, given the configuration of the properties and the uses at present on the properties. It is a very mixed neighborhood over here. You've got DR1F as well as SR2. So there is a diversity of zoning over there, and we felt the STR would be appropriate on the property. Here is, it's in our suburban designation, which is 4 to 8 units an acre. And it is has a daycare use on the property at present. but that is grandfathered in under the current zoning.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, it comes to council.
Mr. Mayor, William Wheeler is on the line. I wasn't sure if he wanted to speak, but he did sign up in case council had any questions.
Oh, great. You want to speak, Mr. Wheeler?
No, I'm just here if anyone has any questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right, Councilmember Appel.
We're just dying to know here, sir, where you got the idea for the name for your entity.
I'm a big Lebowski fan.
You just made my night. Thank you.
The dude abides.
What was his response?
He says a big Lebowski fan. It's a movie.
Gotcha. The little dudes. Gotcha. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And finally, number 9.
Trying to get the slide to advance. We might have a little problem on the slide. You all have the maps in front of you, so I'm gonna move ahead. I don't know why the slide is not advancing. This is at 2131 Clayton Drive in West Ashley. It's a request for a recently annexed property to be zoned single-family residential SR1. There we go. It came up. There we go. It was R4 in Charleston County prior to annexation.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. So next up, thank you all for participating in our public hearings. Next is approval of city council minutes. We had February 22nd and also March 8th. Yeah. We got a motion and a second. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Councilmember Bowden is on his way to become
He's on his way to
new
fatherhood.
father.
I know, man.
Good luck to you. We'll talk to you soon. Next up is our citizens participation period. I think we have just a few folks.
We have 10 people signed up to speak.
All right.
And your time limit.
Just given the hour of the evening, let's say 90 seconds.
Okay.
All right, order, we're going to proceed with our citizens participation period. Madam Clerk.
All right, our first speaker is Anthony Bryant, and we have 90 seconds.
A referral from the Public Safety Committee to the federal government on Anthony G. Bryant via Hembry. Senator Hembry got a law he's putting out on the death penalty, on firing squads. In 1989, my identity was stolen. 2008, the Public Safety Police Department put my name, my social security number on a police report to humiliate me. The DHEC referred my name to the Attorney General, whose church is a group of perverts in their church, referred my name to the feds. I'm here right now to defend my honor absent of any person in this room. My father worked hard for his house and for his sons. I'm offended by the fact that Mr. Hembry and others think they can just lie on Black people, put them in prison, and do them in. That's what's going on in the judicial system in this state with these bigots and racists that's in there, playing games with Black people and Black people's lives. You play with mine. Here's your work. Here's your file. Take it. You the police. Come pick it up. You the police. You give it to the mayor. You the police, ain't you? Ain't no fear here. Ain't no fear here. None. I'm a powerful, strong Black man. I have no fear of you at all. And I'll defend my honor after any consequence.
Time.
Thank you, sir.
Brandon Fish. Nathan Gates.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I live at 759 Rutledge Ave, Apartment D. I'm also a member of the Charleston Fire Department. Come before you today to let you know the status, how things are going. We're still 46 down. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to be 48 positions short.
Can you speak closer into the microphone?
Yes, ma'am. The cost of the taxpayer will be approximately $500,000 to place these vacant positions. We currently have Academy going, and that will be completed in June or July this year. If we look at some of our comparables, Cary, Durham, Raleigh, Savannah, Hilton Head, we fall behind from our entry level position to the top out position, 7% below at the bottom, and then 20% lower at the top of that position. Our brothers and sisters in Durham recently received a 14.3% raise in January. We realized we're only 41 days into the 90-day review period ordered for the first responder pay. We're looking forward to see what BFRC and Human Resources has collected, and we hope at that time they consider a livability wage and they make all their findings public so everyone can view it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Brian Axelrod.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Brian Axelrod. I'm a firefighter with the city of Charleston. I've been a member of the department for 8 years. And in the 8 years that I've been there, I've seen over 150 brothers and sisters leave. And the majority is because of pay. So with that being said, I only make $15.65 an hour. And the only reason is because of the 4.5% that was recently given to us. The starting pay is still $12.88. Livable wage here is quoted at $16.65 to $17.26. So we're not in the line of work where you can hire a new person and actually fill that void. We're at the point where hemorrhaging experience and knowledge, it's invaluable. We've lost 318 years of experience in the past year. You were just speaking about the platinum rule. Do better for others as you would for yourself. We just look forward to the results of the BRFC pay plan. Just thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mohammed Idris.
Evening again. I want to thank Councilman Waring, and I want to thank those who said we should follow the golden rules. We do know that the one who got the gold make the rules. So we should be seeking people to get people to build that center for the homeless who have talent, because we know that people stays in these homeless places who have talent, and to keep from paying rent while they're on their job, they go to the homeless place and stay. Engineers in different places. We got people who sitting up in jail, ain't doing nothing but got talent, didn't kill nobody or nothing. We should be getting them to help build a homeless center like Councilman Waring is saying, and it could be done. One time in this country, that's what we used to do. The people who was in jail, they be on the chain gang. They doing all kinds of different things. They didn't sit up in jail. Here, a man hits you in your head. He goes to jail, you go to the hospital. Then you got to pay for him to stay in jail. And he's sitting in jail looking at television.
Time.
Excuse me, because this.
Please wrap up. Yes, sir.
He's sitting in jail, having visit from his wife, having all kinds of privileges, and you sitting in the hospital and your taxes is going up.
Thank you, sir.
And the next speaker, I think the name begins with Lieutenant.
Not quite sure what decorum is. Normally I would be in a tie, but I love the Ghostbusters. It would take a tremendous amount of positive energy to crack that shell, and I seriously doubt if there's enough goodwill left in this town to do it. There's got to be a few sparks of sweet humanity left in this burned out burg. We just have to figure out a way to mobilize it. We need something that everyone in town can get behind. We need something of a symbol. Something that appeals to the best in each and every one of us. Something good. Something decent. And something pure. Nanu nanu, namaste, and aloha. I'm Lieutenant Tan Stayafam. Now, y'all know Lieutenant Dan. He lost his legs.
Time.
Please wrap up.
I'd like to try and help the veterans experiencing homelessness in this area. I'm trying to move my podcast to the streets. It's based out of my home right now.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to know how and where I can go. So I'm in charge of
Thank you, sir. This is a comment period. Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
And we will move on to our online speakers, Jerome Harris. If you're on the line, if you could press start. Oh,
I'm here. I'm here. Jerome Harris, 527 Cecilia Cove Drive. Trying to recapture the spirit of the opening prayer and the proclamation. We talked about never forget. We can't forget the horrors of the Holocaust, but we also should not forget the fact that the Germans based their whole concept of the final solution on what was happening here in the United States, the Jim Crow approach here. We also should not forget that Black veterans fought to free those folks. In addition, they came home, right, and were treated not like first-class citizens. I urge to thank the council for moving forward, passing the resolution for the ordinance, question whether or not you have made action to implement the ordinance, the appointments to the commission, congratulate the office on creating GIS department or creating the racial justice, racial equity tool. It's important. And it also is important that you think about who you appoint. That data, that information, and the ability, folks, to be in the spirit of the resolution or the proclamation that you passed to talk about humanity and focusing on that. If the members are not in that space, if they do not have that kind of sensibility, but rather are somewhat in the spirit of the Nazis, all right, we will not be able to move forward.
Time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Tony Daniel.
Good evening, council. My father was telling me while he was listening to earlier that his brother went to Ordrif and freed the prisoners at that concentration camp with Patton. My father was in Korea. I had 3 deployments. What happened while I was gone? My roads were blocked. You didn't enforce the code. Matter of fact, Ross Appel said in writing, we're not going to enforce the code so that we can allow people to park in front of your house and stop in front of your house and have all this traffic. My father wrote a comment that I was stunned by. He said, I think city council wants our family to simply evaporate. This is after a lifetime of service. I'd like to know the number of people in the room raised their hands and said they defended the country. They went to another place. Earlier in the day, I heard it said, oh, I spent the night in a homeless shelter and it was scary. If you think that's scary, spend a year at war. And what happened? I gladly did it. My entire family gladly did it. And what do we ask? We ask to be treated fairly. The oath that you swore when you stood in front of the flag. It is time to fix the situation in Country Club number 2. Your lawyer said it is illegal. The roads were supposed to be temporarily barricaded, not permanently with trees planted in the middle of it. A temporary barricades. That is not what we have. We have permanent displacement, tons of traffic, and there are solutions, and nobody's looked to find any of the solutions. Thank you.
Bonnie Harris Lowe. Bonnie Harris Lowe. Dr. Herman Daniel.
Given the late hour, my father went to bed. So in speaking on his behalf, I already brought up the points that are important. You talk about following the process. You talk about following the code. The law is clear. The rules are clear. The rules weren't followed. A group of individuals went before the city, said, we want to close the roads. The city said, no, you cannot. So they closed them anyway. Is this part of the process that you say we want to have exist? Is this what you want to represent to the citizens of South Carolina and to Charleston? It's okay for us to do whatever we want. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We did receive some comments. One person said the war in Ukraine was illegal, and so were road closures on Frampton and Fairway. Those both should be condemned. He said he provided numerous traffic screenshots of the morning and afternoon commute and school traffic on Frampton and Harborview, and that it had only increased. He said his father was as important as anyone in the neighborhood and deserved the help of the city because the law supported his position. One person said the road closures were illegal when there is no order to close the roads. One person quoted Leviticus 1932. We received a comment via email regarding the purchase of property at 11 Cunnington Avenue. They said the purchase value exceeded the surrounding property values and urged council to defer the item until more accurate description based on fair market value was determined. One person advocated for the purchase of 11 Cunnington Avenue to serve as the base for the Hope Center. The building would be expanded to include laundry, shower facilities, a kitchen, meal distribution space, and flex space that would be used as a warming shelter in the winter and cooling shelter in the summer for homeless individuals. And those are all the comments we received.
Thank you very much. That's the end of our public participation period this evening. Thank you, everyone who participated. I would like to, I'm not sure that the email went out to council members from me late today, but it will tomorrow if it didn't, regarding the Human Affairs Racial Conciliation Commission, that we have now 3 council members who have agreed to serve on the commission, being council members Saccharine and Gregory and Bowden, who just departed. And so that means that everybody else on council needs to submit a nomination to me to serve on the committee, as Mr. Harris just mentioned. And I'm going to respectfully ask, since that y'all try by next Tuesday to send me your name, your nomination, so that we can vet it a little bit and then have it ready for our next city council meeting for your consideration, because then the council has to approve all the new members. So anyway, more instructions on that. Councilmember Gregory.
On the appointments to the commission. And the mayor sort of mentioned it in passing in terms of vetting, because there is a provision in the ordinance that passed that says the recommendations will in fact go through a vetting process. So please, whoever you recommend, let's make sure that they have the kind of background, okay? Just like we do for all of our committees, okay? People have a specialty in order for them to be able to participate on those committees. And I want to hold our city council members to the same standard for HARC. I call it HARC, for HARC. That the vetting process is one where we need to make sure that the people who will be participating has the kind of background and interest to be able to carry out the duties as articulated in the ordinance for HARC, Mr. Mayor. So I know you did mention vetting, but I think that it's very important that people know that, just as we do for other committees, to make sure that the background is there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, speaking of appointments, we have 1A, B, and C two of which are just committee of council member appointments to existing committees, and then Ms. Kennerty to the Commission on the Arts.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna
Move
have
for
to,
approval.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna have to decline service on History Commission. No, I'm serious.
I thought you'd be so interested to serve on the History Commission.
I really appreciate your confidence, but that's one that's just assistant. Well, that's not good for me.
Do I have any volunteers that would like to serve?
I'd like
on
to
the History
recommend
Commission?
Councilmember Mitchell.
He just got off of it.
I found his history of hotels in Charleston fascinating.
Any volunteers, council members? Anybody want to serve on the History Commission?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Shealy.
Okay, should we nominate Councilmember Shealy to the History Commission?
May I ask a question? Why? Why? If I volunteer for this commission, my husband he will laugh. He'll go, I think they picked the wrong one.
Truthfully, I'm more of a numeric person. I can kind of tell for me in this area. So history, I need to be told about history.
Okay.
All right, well, in respect of Councilmember Shealy, I'll ask him later. So can I have a motion to accept these appointments less Councilmember Waring without you being a part of it?
I move for approval on it.
Yeah, all right. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next, there was this great article y'all might have seen about our interactive racial equity story map tool. And Amber, she is here. Are you prepared to give us a little tour or explanation of the map tour? This was requested that council take a look at this after that article ran a couple of weeks ago in the paper. Amber, you might bring the mic down a little bit there. There you go.
So thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present our interactive story map. Although you only see two of us up here today, this was truly a collaborative effort. I'd like to briefly acknowledge everyone who helped us with this project. Casey Conrad, Sandy Gagney, Robert Hawk, Jim Hemphill, Omar Mohammed, and Chloe Stuber, who's with me tonight. Okay. This tool is modeled after the Asheville Racial Equity Tool, and it creates an opportunity to discuss the data and use the data to inform our decisions regarding the racial equities that exist throughout the city. In order for transformation to occur, an understanding of our racialized history is required. A mapping tool such as this is critical for us to use in order for change to occur. During Chloe and I's discussion about the comprehensive plan, which I would note for the first time incorporate to equity, this project came about. And so we thought it was important to learn about the where when looking at statistics about race, history, and economic gaps. And in organizations, learning, talking, and analysis about the where is how we solve problems and how we create change. Having equity data in our GIS means that it's accessible and allows us to integrate it into everything we do in the organization to achieve our equity goals.
All right, so I'm going to give a quick tour of what's in the story map. First, if you haven't heard the term story map before, it's just essentially a standalone web page that guides the user through an interactive experience with a lot, typically pretty complex information. There's multiple layers, and so it guides them through. There's a lot of graphics in addition to typically interactive maps, hence the map part of the story map. Our stormwater department does a great job of using this tool to explain their projects. So in this story map, we have essentially, we start with an introduction to racial equity, definitions, other key terms. Then there's a very brief, underlining brief in bold here, history of Charleston and race. So we just touch on some key highlights, and the timeline is really focused on specifically the role of local government, and not just local government, state and federal as well, decisions and actions in the past that have led to some of the racial disparities that we see today. And then we go into the data of those racial disparities and also how those are, the implications of those in gentrification and displacement in our city. And then we end with highlights on additional racial equity data resources that we have in the city and some ways that we can use this information going forward to guide our work. And one other quick note, these are self-guided. So that we're not taking you through the story map itself. We encourage you all to spend time with it. So we're just touching on some key highlights. One of the pieces in the timeline at the beginning of the story map references the 1931 Morrison-Knowles report. This was a report that was prepared for the City of Charleston Planning and Zoning Commission, and it accompanied the city's first zoning ordinance. It had explicit racial language in the report itself, and also a general plan map that had race-based residential districts. That was the legend that you saw on the first screen. And though the zoning ordinance and the zoning map itself did not have any racially explicit language, these two were working together. The documents were informing one another. And so this is something that we are going to be doing further work on analyzing once we have those digitized, all the maps that accompanied that report. Right now, our records management office is working with College of Charleston to get those scanned. So you'll be seeing more about that once we have that information. Another spotlight is an additional story map. So there's story map and a story map. You can click through to open up the urban displacement story map. And this is showing historical imagery next to modern day imagery and the impacts of urban renewal era projects in Charleston. So specifically major infrastructure projects and the impacts of those projects on predominantly Black communities in Charleston County, not just in the city of Charleston. And I'll let Amber speak to this one. This was her.
So the racial equity timeline story map, it's based on a project that Councilman Ackerman and I are participating in with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Part of that project asked us to complete a timeline. So we were able to take that timeline, add related images, and map the locations in that timeline to complete this additional story map.
We have some graphs in addition to the maps that I'll show you in a second. So in these charts, these are charts that were prepared for the Charleston City Plan. It pulls from both since our American Community Survey data as well of the city plan housing analysis that we procured. And this is just showing population change by race across over time and also by area of the city. We're showing a loss in the Black population specifically. This is data that I'm sure you all have heard of before. Also looking at wage disparities between Black and white households, and that gap is actually increased or increasing. And then this last graph is showing cost burdenness, housing cost burdenness by area. So cost burden is when a house pays or a household pays more than 30% of their annual income on housing. So these are high across the city, but we did find that it's twice as more likely, or predominantly Black neighborhoods are twice as more likely to be cost burdened than majority white neighborhoods. These are maps showing some of the data. I'm not going to show you all the maps. There's 6 in there. And again, these are interactive. You can click on the different elements of the map. You can zoom in and out. These are just going to be still images. One of the maps is showing that same population change data, but spatially. And so this is by neighborhood. The dark yellow is a decrease in Black population. And this is using the most recent 2020 census data at the block level. We have a neighborhood change map, which is a term that is used often interchangeably with gentrification. It's essentially measuring for the same things. So it's looking at not just change in race, but also income, education, cost of rent, and household size. And so the dark purple are areas of high change, high neighborhood change in the city. We use the Los Angeles indices of neighborhood change methodology for that. So you can click to learn more about that if you're interested. And then this last map I'll highlight is a side-by-side comparison between that neighborhood change map and a housing cost change map. The housing cost change map shows the change in number of rent burdened households. So again, that cost burdened means that they're paying more than 30% of their income on rent. And so the dark blue is showing a decrease in rent burdened households. We found when looking at these side by side that the decrease in rent burdened households corresponded almost exactly with areas of high change in the city. So that can take a while to process. So I'll kind of walk through the explanations for what could be causing that are either wages are increasing or housing costs are going down, or those who are rent burdened previously have since left and people with higher incomes have moved in. Since we know the first two of those, wages are not keeping up with housing prices, housing costs are not going down, then the third explanation makes the most sense. So this is something that is not news to many people, that housing costs and has an association with gentrification displacement, but this data just shows us that cause and effect, and also gives us some measures that we can use to look in the future of where we can aim our strategies to prevent displacement and gentrification going forward.
So the tools that were highlighted in the story map can be found on the Open Data portal under the racial equity. Currently, what's featured there is the street tree canopy, social vulnerability, and the Charleston Police Department racial bias audit tracking dashboard. We hope to be able to add more there in the future. Right now, this is just the beginning of this map. We hope to continue to grow it as the work continues to grow. We know that internally we're doing a lot of work, and we'd like to share this across departments, also externally with our community partners and academic institutions, so that we can share this information and continue to inform our decisions as we move forward. And this is where the map can be found. Thank you for your time.
Great. Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
What they've shared is really just the tip of the iceberg of what this story map does. I mean, I had the opportunity, I took the opportunity to go through it, to click here, click there, see where redlining occurred, how redlining affected African-American communities. It's a fantastic piece of information that really shows us how we got to where we are and how important it is that we have HARC. Because what it does is substantiates, Mayor, as you know, a lot of the issues and concerns that were raised with the special commission. So anybody that wants to really dig in a little more, it's just as simple as just clicking that. And it takes you through tons of pages and data and information on race, disparity, and equity. You can actually see it. So I really applaud the great work that these ladies have done. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Chloe, Amber, y'all have done a terrific job. Thank you so much. Any other questions for them? Councilmember Ackerman.
I will be brief. Chloe and Amber, thank you for the work. I wasn't on council when y'all voted on the slavery apology, but I'm going to use that as a kind of a reflection point for me. I know many on council didn't vote, some didn't vote because it didn't go far enough. I'm thinking of the arc of progress that I've seen and watching. So we have the slavery apology, we have Amber's office, we have the commission, now the newly formed permanent commission. I do feel like tonight is a critical moment. I know this stuff doesn't get played out in the news and it's not really sexy, but we are connecting, implementing action ideas with data. And when you do that, that's when I think real change occurs, because if you aren't measuring something, you're not going to improve on it. This is a starting point to measure where we're headed. So I think it's a monumental shift, because now we're talking about data. We're not talking about feelings and emotions. This is real. So I just want to say thank you, Amber and Chloe, for getting us on this trajectory, which I believe is a new page in our city's history in terms of reflecting on our past. So thank you.
And it just substantiates the data from the disparity study that was done by Avery. It really, really solidifies it and shows you how it happened.
And it's up to date as well. They've used the 2020, the more current census data, and the trends are still there, y'all. So this will be an incredible tool for us, but also specifically for the Human Affairs Commission to be able to talk about policy and base it on data, as you say, Councilmember Ackerman, rather than emotions or hypotheticals. So anyway, this is great work. Wanted to share it with all of council. So next up is a very brief report from me. I think Tracy's at home a little under the weather this evening, and all I'm going to report to you on COVID is that what the case numbers where the CDC had recognized this area as being medium, we're now low, and so that's a good thing. Employee cases remain at 0 for the second meeting in a row. So both good pieces of news. That's all I got to report to you on COVID. Next up is our council communications. First is a recognition of local organizations that support and are run by women. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to quickly say, I didn't get to run down a list. There are so many great organizations in this city that support the women of our city that are run by women, but just want to throw out a few. I did not expect tonight to be this long, so I'll be quick. Postpartum Support Charleston, YWCA, American Association of University Women, Junior League, Women's Rights and Empowerment Network, My Sister's House, Florence Crittenton Home, Tri-County Speaks, Elevate Tri-County Women's Project, Charleston Junior Women's Club. Obviously, these are all wonderful organizations that support our community. I commend them. Let's continue to support them as they support the women of our community. Council members, I would love for you in each one of your districts to just let me know one thing that maybe the women of your district might want on, to be pushed into our commission on women. Please just let me know. I would love to bring something, and I know those women work really hard and they've obviously been on the commission a lot longer than I have, but bring me one thing from your district. I just hope you can do that, but
All right.
that's it. Thank you.
Any comments or questions on that?
I know what's coming from my district. Paid family leave.
Okay.
Next up is a discussion regarding mask and vaccine mandate for employees and city buildings, an update of implementation process. Councilmember Parker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, this is not to be a long drawn out conversation, just an update. Again, I have not received a response for the Attorney General. I'm getting the same response as before. So that's really all I have. I will continue to work on coming up with a process, bringing it to committee, and then bringing it to y'all. So just wanted to kind of update you on that. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Shade and then Gregory.
I pulled Judge Norton's order that addressed the lawsuit that was brought out. I'll give you a copy of this, Councilmember Parker. This may answer some of your questions. But this was the order that denied their motion for temporary relief. And on page 38 of the order, it talks strictly about South Carolina Home Rule Act. And Judge Norton's order stamped out any challenge that the plaintiffs may have had to the Home Rule Act. And it cites the memorandum you should have received from corporate counsel as to this particular issue as well. The second order I'm going to give you for your information was filed on February 1st that ended the case completely with prejudice. So the matter has been resolved, quite frankly. You can get an attorney general opinion if you want, and you can pursue that. But the law of the case dealing with this mass ordinance and the mayor's actions have been validated by those orders. Attorney General's opinion does not trump a federal district judge's order. And that's the end of the matter. If you want to get an Attorney General opinion, go ahead and do that. But I think this may help you understand the process a little bit better as to what transpired.
Thank you. Councilmember Gregory.
I think at some point, we need to have a discussion of the difference between a policy and a law. I think that's very important. And the mayor has the responsibility to carry out either as the executive branch. Because sometimes we ask our corporation counsel for legal opinions when they're really policy decisions that can be made by this body without even going to them, okay? Now, don't get me wrong, they're not gonna let us make a policy decision that is going to cause us problems, but I think that it's very important that at some point we have a discussion over the distinction between policy and law. Policies tend to be very procedural in nature. Policies tend to grow from a law, okay? And vice versa sometimes. But I do think at some point we need to have that kind of discussion, Mr. Mayor, because there is a distinction between a policy and a law, and it's much easier for you, Councilmember Parker, change that policy. And I think what you're talking about is policy, really. And you can make a recommendation for changes. All you need is 7 votes, okay?
All right. Anyone else before I come back to Councilmember Parker?
Yes, just again, more regarding the process. Councilmember Shade, I'm well aware of everything that you've printed out for me. Again, it was just keeping it here. Again, if we go back to the COVID-19 update, it's all but disappeared until it's back. And that's when we need to talk about process and our city staff. So that's the only reason it was on here tonight. If you'd like to discuss it further, but I don't, it was just an update.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we've had 3
Councilmember
council
Shade.
meetings on this particular subject. And it's the same questions that's come up at the same time. And your actions and the actions of other jurisdictions have been validated. And it's not a question of policy or procedure. It's a question of the mayor's authority as to implementing what you implemented. And it was been ruled upon. It's not an attorney general's opinion. It's not corporate counsel's opinion. It's a decision by a sitting judge who ruled that this was a proper mechanism, which you did, and what other jurisdictions did as well. So I'm not sure what the end game is on this matter. Glad to continue having a discussion about it. But at the end of the day, talking about the mass ordinance or the mass policy or the mass process that you implemented has been said it's okay. And the case is now over. And if you have another crisis that comes up and you follow that same process and someone challenges it, I suspect that the ruling will be pretty identical to what you just did before. So we can have it back on council communications. We can keep on talking about it. But at the end of the day, this matter has been resolved completely and finally.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, then we're going to move forward. Thank you, Councilmember Parker. We're going to move forward with our council committee reports. First up is Councilmember Waring, Public Works.
I second the motion, Mr. Mayor. Everything was approved, Mr. Mayor, as you see on the agenda, unanimous by the committee, and they have already moved. So-
Yeah, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is Ways and Means, I think.
Second. You got stormwater, right?
As amended,
Second.
okay. What was amended? Right. Okay. I'm sure Madam Clerk has got all of that, right?
And yes, and then the Charleston Museum item from real estate was deferred.
Okay. All right, we'll approve it as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is bills for second reading. I think we got 1 through 4.
Second. We take 1 through 4.
And number 4 is as amended as well.
It's amended. 4 is amended.
Any discussion or questions about 1 through 4? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now
Move for
third
approval.
reading
Second.
and ratification of 1 through 4, 4 as amended. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Our bill up for first reading has been deferred, and our next regular meeting is going to be on April 12th. If somebody wants to just say something for 30 seconds while I sign these things.
Challenge accepted, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to see this ADU ordinance come back before council. I think we've struck a decent compromise here, but this has just been kind of languishing for several months now. It's time to get with it. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I want to ask a question. Have we heard anything or have you gotten with Mr. Jones dealing with the bus to take the young kids to Charlotte yet? Have you heard anything about it?
You know, I don't have any new news on that. I'll be honest with you. Mr. Wack was working on that for me, and I'll have to ask him in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah. Any further business come before us this evening? If not,
Move to adjourn.
Stand adjourned.